Good evening, everyone. Tonight is a regular meeting of the South Kingstown Planning Board. The date is Tuesday, October 28th, 2025. The time is 6:30 p.m. Our first agenda item is roll call. Susan Axelrod. Here. Liz Karp. Here. Joe Murphy. Here. Robin Pothier. Here. Caper Wilson. Here. Armand Monaco. Here. And Maria Mack is here. Our next agenda item is approval of minutes. This consists of minutes from September 9th, 2025 work session, September 26th, 2025 regular session.
Madam Chair, just as a point of clarification, we are working with a new software.
Sorry, it's actually 23rd.
We are working with a new software program
Yes.
that is somewhat AI-driven, so there are some typos contained in there and some potential duplication on the attendance rolls. We will correct those as grammatic in nature before filing.
Sounds good. Have to keep an eye on that AI intervention.
There's also I don't know if you caught this, Jamie, but there's a gap on the minutes for September 9th. Usually we start with who's present.
That is part of the software functionality we're working through.
Yeah. And then the other one that I found a little awkward, maybe I just missed it, but towards the end, they're talking about the planning board training on November 15th, and they designate the site as the Inn at the Crossings in Warwick, Rhode Island. If I'm not mistaken, it's the Crown Plaza. And I think people should show up at the right place.
Thank you, Caper. If there are no further corrections or additions, would someone like to make a motion?
I actually have another one, too.
Go ahead.
In the meeting of September 23rd, we had Mr. Hazard present to us a 3-lot subdivision on Saugatucket Road. And I think, if I recall, part of the discussion was he had alluded to the potential 4th lot he'd like to put in at some point, and then another portion of the property he'd like to develop. And I believe we asked him to potentially create like a master plan of the entire property before he came back to talk about that 3-lot subdivision he'd like to do. Are you remembering that?
Yes, but we don't always have a tremendous amount of detail at pre-app.
Okay.
Again, for the pre-app, it's a synopsis of the discussion, not a transcript of the discussion.
Right, but is he looking at this to remind himself of tasks that he's been sent to do?
The meeting minutes are not intended as a punch
Okay.
list for an applicant.
It's all good.
If there are no further additions or corrections, would someone like to make a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make the motion to approve.
We have a motion from Caper. Do we have a second? Second from Joe. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays or Very good, thank you. Next agenda item, major subdivision flexible design residential project, the Woods at Stone Soup Farm. We have a request from the planning director on an advisory opinion on amendments to a previously approved plan. Jamie?
Just, Madam Chair, thank you, Jamie Rabbit, Planning Director. Mr. Gilbert is in attendance this evening. This is a prior subdivision that was approved, 7 lots, 8 residential units, including 1 affordable unit as part of the inclusionary transcript of our regulations. The layout of the development, when it was codified as it relates to the approval, showed 8 homes on 7 lots, all of the footprints in essence the same rectangular type shape. There's a provision within the inclusionary zoning regulations that does allow the affordable unit to be subordinate or accessory to the primary unit. The approval, the meeting minutes, and the way the survey plan portrays that doesn't necessarily correlate. But in my discussions with Mr. Gilbert, and I'm sure he'll add a few things this evening, is that according to the incentive zoning regulations, he would have been able to get additional density, or he would have got additional lots. So I think if you look at it on its face value, that you wouldn't do two multi-seven-figure homes on the same lot if the regulations actually allowed you to place them on separate lots. So I think there is some information contained in the regulations, information contained in the layout that could lead you to the conclusion that the accessory unit was designed to be subordinate to the primary unit on one lot, although the survey plan doesn't reflect that. But again, Mr. Gilbert will, show you his side of that. He's also included in the information we supplied to the planning board the proposed architecture of that second unit, the affordable unit on that main lot. The architecture, building material choices are consistent with the materials being used throughout the subdivision and are consistent from an architectural standpoint as it relates to the house next to this unit and consistent with the other homes. It is smaller than the other homes in the development, but again, that leads to the regulatory side, which under an inclusionary does allow accessory. It's unfortunate that when the motions were made almost 10 years ago and the survey plans were recorded and given to the planning board, that didn't clearly articulate that. I'm here before you tonight and ask Mr. Gilbert to be here because, again, this is something that could be handled as the administrative officer as either solidification of a prior approval or a minor change to something that was recorded. So, again, I saw Mr. Gilbert here, so
Yes,
he
thank
is
you,
here.
Jamie. Good evening.
Oops, sorry. Mr. Gilbert.
And just restate your name for the record, please.
Jonathan Gilbert, representing Sand Dollar, which is the original owner, and still current owner, just under a different ownership at this point. Everything that Jamie said is fairly accurate. The survey plan that we submitted for approval was not for homes to be built. It was for site suitability for DEM. There was never any discussion concerning all the homes to be exactly the same size, and I think that's fairly obvious. I do have an email chain from Chelsea Seifert, who was the planner at the time, and we discussed basically what I thought was approved and agreed to. The email chain talked about nuances of what was an allowed accessory dwelling at the time, and it was too small, and it was 750 square feet. The Affordable Housing Committee had asked for 2 bedrooms, and there was some discussion, can you put 2 bedrooms in 750 square feet, and obviously that would be kind of tight. So her way around the whole thing was simply to allow 2 houses, 1 lot. Irregardless, I was surprised when I brought a set of plans and that idea of doing something that was more or less an accessory dwelling that, as Jamie said, mimicked what we had already built in the lot was surprising, but then he explained it to me, and I get where we're at this point. What I tried to do is put a package together that made it pretty clear what the intent was. The design was not a done design. It was just a conceptual design for what we had planned on doing. I think it's really the best use for the lot. I think going with a like structure accomplishes what Jamie had explained to me was your current goal for, I don't know if hiding is the right word, but making affordables fit within a subdivision. I think what we have going on right now in South Kingston is a lot of accessory dwellings being built. So as you're roaming around town and you're looking at the new accessory dwellings being built, and let's call it 10 years from now, there's a bunch of them. How do you identify one that's affordable or one that's not affordable? I think also the size of the structure that is proposed is considerably larger than what an accessory structure is currently allowed to be. And I think it's the right use for the lot. I think it's the right design. And again, I provided the photos to try to illustrate that. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot.
Thanks. Questions, comments from board members? Caper?
My question really is, I wasn't here when the issue came up before, but if there are members of the planning board who were, I'd like to hear what their thoughts about this are.
I think it's Joe and I. This was under our original inclusionary zoning ordinance. It was not a comprehensive permit. It was 80% AMI, which we rarely see these days, and it was a 99-year affordability timeframe, which is also rare and desired. Comments, Joe?
I got a question for staff, I guess, and maybe Peter, but if this was a comprehensive permit, the requirement would be that it was compatible in size and architectural appearance and aesthetics. That is, based on what you said earlier, that is not in our inclusionary zoning?
So in our inclusionary zoning, it talks about the 99-year restriction, the AMI percentage, and it does have a version. It can be like the units in, or it can also be built as an accessory unit to one of the primary structures. So that language exists in our inclusionary zoning regulations, which is different than the comp permit language in Rhode Island law, and then South Kingstown has some of the case law associated with at least SHAB, where the planning board turned down an application that was appealed to SHAB, and one of the reasons the planning board appealed it, along with a host of others, was the fact that the affordables were proposed as accessory dwelling units over a garage. But again, that was associated with the comprehensive permit process under Rhode Island law. It didn't contemplate the inclusionary language in our existing zoning regulations that do allow the affordable units to be in an accessory type structure that is subordinate to the primary structure on a piece of land. So there's a distinction between comp permit and the inclusionary zoning regulations. You know, if that accessory language wasn't included in the inclusionary language of our existing zoning regulations, it'd be a different conversation tonight. But I think the regulations allow for it to be accessory or subordinate to the primary. And again, Mr. Gilbert has included in the information supplied to both staff and the planning board that the materials are going to be of like kind and quality to the existing home, you know, which is cedar shakes and clapboards, you know, 4-tab or 3-tab architectural shingles. It's, you know, it's not main house with a lot of architectural detail, accessory house, square box with vinyl siding. They are comparable in quality, not necessarily comparable in size, but there is a relationship to the size. You know, this is, as Mr. Gilbert said, this is a 720 square foot home. This is in essence a 12 to 1400 square foot home. If we look at the outbuilding, it happens to be on 2 stories.
I don't think it was is it a 1,400 square foot home? I thought I saw in the plans something that was smaller than that.
How many square feet is it?
Of the living
I
space.
think it's 12 inch.
Living space of the affordable or the main house?
Of the affordable.
The affordable
It was like
is...
900 or 950 or something?
No, it's, the footprint is 18 by 44, and it's 2 floors. It's a 6-foot slope on the lot. So, you know, you're going to have some exposed foundations, or you do a walkout. So the thought was to simply do a walkout. There is a set of plans that you should have received that shows layout that works really well. It's a very efficient plan. It's also efficient to heat, and it matches the architecture of our house, which the same section in our house is 20 by 40 rather than 18 by 44. So it's more or less the same square footage. And it is what is our great room, sort of similar uses.
Okay.
So it really matches, those two structures match each other. The photos of the existing structure are what the affordable are going to be.
So it's been a long time since the original approval, so I would just ask staff whether they reviewed the original approval to see if there was any conditions of approval that was either applicable to this affordable or any discussion in the minutes that would be applicable for our consideration.
So again, we reviewed the existing file, we reviewed the approval. The primary two things that are correlated to this is the 99-year restriction, the 80% AMI. There was no discussion in the motion or in the minutes about the size of the unit. So again, that's why I felt more comfortable coming back to the planning board, seeking your guidance. Again, the guidance is that it would be appropriate for this to be reviewed and issued as an administrative change to a prior approved development, or just an administrative approval of the accessory dwelling unit. So again, it's not a decision to approve or deny by the board. It's basically confirmation that the administrative officer can approve this as an accessory or subordinate unit on Lot 7.
All right, thank you.
Other comments or questions from board members? I do. Susan?
Hi.
Aye.
I have a couple of questions. So you're presently living in the main house that's on this lot?
Yes.
I think I would be interested in assuring that there's some provision in the deed to your house or on the deed to this property that this affordable unit is always either rented or on the marketplace to be rented. We faced a similar project here a couple of years ago where they wanted to use the accessory space over the garages to be the affordable units. And one of the things that concerned this board was that there was no provision to make sure they were actually using that unit as affordable, as opposed to storing their stuff or letting their kids stay there or using it as a guest house. So can we put some kind of provision in this that ensures that, I understand that your intentions are the best here, but should you ever sell that property, that it doesn't become a guest house or an Airbnb or just not used? And some kind of provision for that assurance.
Yeah, I think the affordable underwriting that gets recorded with the deed covers all of that, and it has, most of the language is pretty comprehensive unless that's changed.
So just as a note, if the planning board is okay with the administrative decision that will in all likelihood be rendered by the AO, that along with that, and Joe touched upon this, what was the approvals? In any incentive zoning that it requires an affordable unit or a comp permit, there is a deed restriction that's recorded on the land records, and they are required to have a monitoring agent. And the language in the monitoring agent clarifies the fact it is for rent or sale, has to be occupied by someone who meets the income requirements as an affordable unit. So it cannot be vacant and used as a guest house, because that wouldn't meet the criteria that falls under the responsibility of the monitoring agent. So again, if there's a year-to-year lease, the monitoring agent is looking in the 13th month of what is happening for on the property, and that would either need to be on the market for rented, looking for someone to occupy. It couldn't be, oh, I moved my sister there, or we're just using it in the summer as an Airbnb. So again, that's the role of the monitoring agent, and that's why state law requires that.
And what happens if no one rents it?
It could be deemed in non-compliance with their approvals, and that's an enforcement issue, and they face penalties as allowed by Rhode Island law, unless Peter has anything additional to add.
And who handles the enforcement?
Enforcement would be done by the town. So just like any condition on an approval that you would pass, if someone violates the condition, there's, by law, there's a $500 fine for every day that the violation continues. So, for instance, if this accessory structure, as part of this approval, is required to be a low to moderate income housing rental, and instead it ends up being used as storage for the main house or as a guest house, that would be a violation of the plan. Jamie, as the enforcement officer for the planning board, would send a notice of violation. If they didn't comply with the notice of violation, we could then file suit against them seeking a $500 fine for every day the violation continues.
So basically, it is the planning department that does the enforcement.
Yes.
Thank you.
The monitoring agent, though, is involved to monitor that the house is actually being rented to someone that meets the affordability requirements.
Other questions?
I have one more, sorry. I understand that your intention is to build this secondary unit to mirror or be similar to your main house. Would you be willing to just run those architectural designs past our administrative officer before you start building? Just to have
Yeah.
just have Jamie have a quick look at that?
Yeah, I don't see that being an issue unless it's, he's going to end up modifying the design or something. It's pretty straightforward what it's going to be.
Okay.
If you look at the floor plan, it does show windows. Really, the primary difference is how the upper structure is laid out, and it is going to be what it is, which is what the main house is. Really, the important thing is whether or not I build it that way, and if I don't build it that way, then what happens? I can give them a set of plans, but sometimes you give plans to people and they end up being different than what the plans actually show. So, not to get off subject, but I have no problem bringing him plans now.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Liz?
Liz,
Microphone,
Can
Liz.
hear you.
You just mentioned that the plans might be different than what you would show to Jamie. Why would that, the plans that are actually built, why would that be?
I have no problems bringing him the plans. I just got off subject a little bit. My apologies.
Thank you.
So just from the administrative side, when they go to pull a building permit, the planning department gets pinged in our online permitting process, so we have to sign off on the issuance of that building permit. We would review the building plans to make sure they're consistent with whatever is rendered along with the conditions of the administrative officer. So again, what I am looking for is in essence either consensus or a motion to refer the matter back to the administrative officer for review and approval.
Caper?
Well, to follow up on my original question, Joe, it sounded like you were on the board when it was previously approved?
Joe? Yes, he was.
So you were on the board when it was,
What year was it? I believe I was.
It was. I think we recorded. We were approved in 2018.
Yeah, I was.
I would be happy to support a motion if it's made by one of the planning board members who was on a board at the time.
Sure. I'll be glad to make that motion. Do we have a draft motion, or?
We
I
do
don't think I saw
do
one.
not, but
I
it's...
think the
it's-
draft motion is simply to refer the matter
Yeah,
back to
I
the...
was going to get to that, actually. So the draft motion would be that the board agrees that an administrative change to previously approved subdivision, that this was an original intent of that same subdivision.
So moved.
We have a motion from Joe. Do we have a second? Second from Liz. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays? Abstentions? Motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is Major Land Development Project Extension Reinstatement of Preliminary Plan Approval, Wakefield Alzheimer's Care Facility. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board, professional staff. Jeffrey Brenner from Nixon Peabody, One Citizens Plaza, Providence, Rhode Island, on behalf of the petitioner. Obviously, we were here last month. I tried to not just hear what you were saying, but to listen to what you were saying, and I submitted a letter in response. First, we dealt with the good cause standard issue, which is more legal in nature, but I believe that we have met the standard of good cause as stated at the last meeting in this letter. We also looked at the granite wall issue, and I know Jamie could wave his hand and do the Jedi mind trick. The wall will be torn down and be rebuilt tomorrow. We want to rebuild that wall in conjunction with the development of the property. Richard George, from my client, is here. He has spoken with various contractors. He doesn't have anything in writing. The wall is structurally sound. He could tell you about his conversations. It's not going to fall down. The condition is what it is. We've all been by there. We've all seen it. I think most importantly, I didn't want to just come here and say we want a 2-year extension. I understood from the board's comments that you don't want this property to stay just in some sort of a holding pattern like it's been in, and I don't want that either, and my client doesn't want it. Jamie wants that wall rebuilt. I'm sure the members of the community want something to happen to that property. So what I did at the end of the letter is we modified the request for the extension to say that we commit to, if we get the extension approved, to get it approved through December 31st, 2026. Our primary goal is to submit a final plan, which is derived from the preliminary plan, to have the memory care unit there. We're in the process of doing the legwork to see if that's still viable. If it's not viable, then we will pivot to submit a preliminary plan for a different use. As you know from the preliminary plan that was approved, it's for a specific use, and if that use deviates in any way, you've got to come back. So you will get your hearing. You're going to have a hearing either on the final plan or on the new preliminary plan. I just can't commit to that yet. So rather than just asking for an extension, I committed to a certain date. My client authorized me to commit to a certain date, and we'll be able to have something for everybody to look at. And if we don't do it, then we're done. I mean, then the extension runs out. And I know the artificial intelligence is taking the minutes here, so I will be very clear to make sure the AI hears this is a logic tree. We have either coming back with a final plan, coming back with a preliminary plan for a new use, or we're done. Those are the three things. The first two things, you get your hearing. And other than the chair that was here for the multiple hearings for the original application, and Mr. Murphy, who was here once it was on remand from Superior Court, none of the planning board members have been here, so you haven't had a chance to review this property in detail, so you will have your hearing. And that's what I'm offering in order to get this petition granted, and respectfully say I really was listening to what everyone was saying, relaying it back to my client, and coming here with this modified request for the reasons explained in the letter. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I get to staff, so you're actually asking for, it looks like a 14-month extension.
We're in October, 14
Well,
months now. Yeah.
November is...
Yeah,
okay.
the application is
Right.
technically from September, so it said 16 months, but I gave the specific date of December 31st,
Correct, yes.
2026.
Okay, thanks. Jamie, thoughts from staff and/or legal?
I think, again, the planning board has to make a determination that they feel there's a rational nexus between the request. You are beyond the automatic extension, so again, there needs to be that connection that the information in the record leads you to the conclusion that this extension was warranted. I think it makes it a better discussion by putting a hard deadline on this of December 31st, 2026. The applicant, either between now and that point, brings in final, gets final approved, recorded, and they move on with that project as a memory care facility, or they're back in the permitting queue for some other alternative development, versus saying, you know, we want a year, and then you don't know what happens after that. Is another request for a 2-year extension? Is it another, you know, we'd like to move, but we aren't sure? This puts at least a date or a line in the sand for what happens after a period of time, being roughly 14 months from this evening.
Thanks, Jamie. Anything, Peter, from legal? Comments from board members? Joe?
At the last meeting, I think we had some considerable discussion and determined that there was no changes in the zoning or no changes in the surrounding area. So it was really just an extension. But with that said, I don't think we felt comfortable. That was good cause. I think that the applicant now has come before us and has stated what their plan was, and will either give us a revised final plan, I guess, or, preliminary plan, or come back for a new hearing on something of different use. With that said, I think that is, it's a relatively low bar for good cause, and I think that the applicant meets it, so I would be okay with approving it, the 14-month extension based on the conditions that Mr. Brennan stated.
Jamie, how does the reconstruction of the wall relate to this extension? And is there a time frame potentially associated with that?
Can I comment on that? I'll let you think. I don't think it does, but I have a lot of respect for Jamie in his position in the town. I know it's important to him for the wall to be rebuilt. I relayed that to my client. We want to rebuild the wall, but we want to do it in connection with the development of the property. It's you've seen those granite blocks. There's a lot of work. This isn't like putting Lego. I mean, this is a lot of work to get the wall in, and depending upon what ends up happening with the property, that's going to be done in conjunction with it. So we want to do it anyway. It was part of the preliminary plan, out of respect to the planner, because that's what he wants as well. But I don't think it falls into as like a condition to what we're asking for.
So what you're saying is that the wall is unlikely to be restored for potentially 14 months?
That wall is unlikely to be rebuilt in the next 14 months. I don't think it's as simple as just taking the half dozen or so granite blocks and then placing them on top of the wall just for the heck of it. I think there needs to be a lot more work to be done to the wall to make sure it's completely straight, literally square, fits in with what's being done.
I think what I'm hearing is the wall will not be rebuilt until the site is developed. Not in the next 12 months. Could be 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 6 years, 10 years from now. Because if they let the permit lapse, we're sitting here in December of 2026. The wall's not rebuilt. Council just said the wall would be rebuilt when the property is redeveloped. There's no provision that the landowner has to come in for a new application. So, you know, again, do you have the regulatory authority to condition this? I would defer to council, but it'd be nice if the landowner committed to a time period that if property isn't developed or reapplied for, that wall gets repaired, not just stacked internal to the property, with some sort of time frame, as legal has put a time frame on December 31st. And, you know, again, I think saying that, because again, they could come back in, get a new approval for a new project, and then you're going to wait another extended period of time with another unknown where they're allowed to get extensions, automatic, and then ask for extensions beyond the automatic extension. So I don't know if the owner is here, if there can be some sort of commitment. I'm not asking for 12 months, but maybe something a year from that 12 months, that if a new application isn't approved and under construction, that he will make every effort to repair that wall to its original condition as a steward of the land.
Sure. Let me just make sure I understand. There's one scope of work which you would take the granite blocks that have fallen and you put it on top of where it fell from, and it's there. So that's restoring it to what the condition it was in as of the time of the application. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, or if you're referring to when you said the original condition of the wall, when the wall was built many decades ago before, roots and weather and all that, and then that would require rebuilding completely of the wall. So I'm not sure which one you're referring to, and I do want to ask my client what they're prepared to commit to.
And Madam Chair, one point I would agree with is that the focus of this this petition to extend is pretty narrow. It's really just, is there a good cause, in your opinion, to extend this further, given, what the reasons they've given you for why they need an extension, or not? And then deciding how far you'd like to extend it if you think there is good cause. As far as the wall, if the applicant came in here and said, yes, we'd love to build the wall, that would be fine, but there wouldn't be any way we could enforce that. Really that's up to them. They've given their perspective on it. We can ask, can you do it? But that they're not required to at the end of the day at this point. It's just narrowly focused on.
And could the lack of maintenance of the wall be construed as a lack of good faith?
I think there's two things to think about when you're thinking of good cause. This is just my opinion on it. The statute does not define it, so in a sense it gives you a lot of discretion, but it is focused on the extension deadline. So I think of it as what they can tell you sort of as an excuse for what's happened thus far, why they haven't gotten to this step to this date. Do you feel that like that is a good enough excuse to qualify for a good cause? And then you can look forward to say, will granting this extension allow this property to be developed in a way that you think satisfies good cause? So there's two things you could look at there. I don't think that you could tie it strictly to, we want you to do this. If you don't do this, there is no good cause. So.
Caper?
Well, what concerned me originally is I read the standard a little bit differently. I thought it was good cause shown, and I thought that required the applicant to put a nexus between the issues that constituted good cause and why they had not taken action. And my concern was, when we heard the original proposal, it was we got the approval and then COVID came. And COVID created all this anxiety in society, and nursing homes in particular and hospital facilities were particularly hard hit, and so we didn't move forward. But I don't see any nexus between their decision-making and COVID necessarily. They haven't talked about how they looked at it or how it impacted their thinking about the bottom line, so I have no sense of their motivation. In the meantime, we've looked at any number of proposals for how do we develop Main Street. We have a lot of properties that people want to reshape and develop alternate uses, and it's putting a lot of demands on the town both the community and the expense. I mean, there's a lot of parking issues, there's a lot of water issues, there are a lot of resources that are being called into play. And it seems to me that, we are looking at projects one by one, and we're getting traffic studies done, we're getting all sorts of studies done, looking at that particular project, but are we looking at all of the development that's going on? And when someone has a permit that's been in effect for 2 years, and then they've gotten 2 additional 1-year extension, I think that they are required by law to show a nexus between their inactivity and the factors that are leading them to it. And I don't feel, and I've read all of the case law that you provided me, and frankly, I went to the library and did a little more research, and I don't feel that we've seen good cause shown. And that's my concern. And it's not necessarily your project, it's how we as a community look at all the projects that are before us and how we need to think about our development, not one project at a time, but from an aggregate, what are we doing and where are we going and can we support it, and is this who and what we want to become? That's my problem with your proposal. And the fact that you're not attending to the wall is just disconcerting. And you don't have a legal obligation to do so, but you do have a legal obligation to show me good cause shown.
So while I don't agree with your conclusion, I do agree with your rationale. And that's why I worked with my client since the last meeting to come up with a date that we're going to do one thing or another so that it's done. And I just spoke with my client's representative regarding the wall, and we'd be willing to put the granite blocks back on where they came from within 24 months. So that gives you an outside deadline. Again, listening to Jamie, listening to what the town engineer says. He doesn't want this going on for, I think he said, years or a decade, but for 24, it would be within the next 24 months. And the reason why it's that outside date is because it could very well be sooner if we come back with a final plan for the memory care unit. If we do have to pivot for a different use, then we have to think about where other openings in the wall may be. So it doesn't make sense to put blocks on in an area of a wall which you're going to have a cut. But again, trying to listen, and not just hear, but listen to what you're saying and respond to it. So I don't want to belabor it for all the reasons that we've put in the paper and what we've discussed. I mean, the paper submitted and then what we discussed last time and this time. I think we have good cause shown. If anything, we've given more than what we would have to give by agreeing to a drop-dead date. That's December 31st, 2026.
Peter? We're used to varied legal opinions, so.
I guess all I would say is, as far as the drop-dead date, there would be nothing that would prevent them from coming back again and asking and saying, hey, we have good cause again. But it would be the same showing then as is this time, which is good cause. So it all just comes down to, do you feel they've met the good cause standard? If they have, then you can grant it. If you don't feel they've met the good cause standard, then you don't grant it, and then their approval expires.
Well, again, I think we met the good cause. I stood here for the AI, so that the AI will take down that we agreed to 3 things: either to come back with a final plan in accordance with the preliminary plan, come back with a new preliminary plan for a different use, or that's it. That's what I'm committing to. And most other applicants aren't going to give you the option 3 because they want to keep the door open. If we can't commit to the first thing or the second thing by December 31st, 2026, we're not looking for an extension.
So since the way the extensions work is they're a 2-year and then subsequent 1 year. We could say 1 year as well to November 2026.
Yeah, actually, the statute has the initial 2-year, then 2 1-year.
Yes.
And then it allows further extension. It doesn't provide a time frame. So you could craft a time frame that you feel is appropriate to allow this to proceed. It could be the 14 months that have been put forward by the applicant. Could be another timeline that you want them to come back and show you if they've made some progress. But it all comes down to, do you feel they've met the good cause standard? And then you can move on to the next question of what's the appropriate timeline to approve an extension.
Other thoughts, board members? Susan?
I'm done.
Hi.
Hi.
So I have a question. So your second scenario, which is that you'll come back with a whole different use for the property, could you elaborate on what your thoughts are in that category?
Sure. So right now, there's a preliminary plan for a memory care unit. I mean, you can read the decision, but it's essentially a kind of like a horseshoe-shaped structure. If it was pivoted to a different type of use, and there's many other uses that are permitted within, the zoning ordinance, but one of the most common things I've seen submitted here is a residential use, and I know that there's other properties in the area, as Caper mentioned, about that are residential uses, and how do we, get all these together if you have all these outstanding permits out there? So let's say it was a residential use. In that situation, the applicant could have that same footprint that's previously been approved, or it could have different structures on the property. It could be a, 55 and over type of development. It could be a lot of things, but that would be a residential use that would have to be part of a preliminary plan.
So in that case, you would essentially start from scratch. Like you would potentially not try to modify the footprint and the elevations and the setbacks and all the things we've, and
So-
I was one of the guys out in the audience during the
Yeah,
whole first
there's a
time
lot of
around.
you, yeah.
Yeah. So is your thought then, and one of the reasons I'm asking is because in your narrative, which I also read, you use the words healthcare industry stabilized. And
Yeah.
it's my impression from being a newsreader that the healthcare industry is not stabilized right now at all. And hospitals, nursing homes, assisted living facilities are closing, and there's
Yeah.
potentially going to be some hardcore disruption to the way we care for our aging
Yeah.
population. So to me, and this is your business model, and you're smarter than I am on this, but to me, opening an extended care facility while they're closing and funding, and so I want your business to succeed. What I'm most concerned in is that we don't have this big old albatross on Main Street that your business didn't survive, and now what do we do? And so
Yeah.
in a longer range thing, I don't want to see that failure for your company and your client's company, but I also am sort of looking forward to what happens if this chaos continues and your business is,
Sure.
you build it and it doesn't survive. And how can that be pivoted? And so therefore, what are your other thoughts on that property if this doesn't materialize?
Sure. So any deviation from the use would be starting from scratch, because you need a new preliminary plan. So in my mind, if you're going to have a different preliminary plan because you're changing use, that gives the board every opportunity to start looking into all those other factors that were looked in before, whether it be the traffic, the engineering, the what it looks like, the massing, all that. That's all going to come into play again. My client's first objective is to move forward with the preliminary plan and get a final plan. They, like you, do not want to build something that will fail. As was mentioned at the last bunch of hearings many years ago, they're a for-profit company. They do not want to build something that's going to fail. not that not-for-profits want to build something that fails, but they have extra, they have, that extra incentive. They do not want it to fail. And if they don't think that it's going to be a viable project, they will pivot from that approved project and then submit a preliminary plan for something else. And that something else might be the exact same footprint what's been approved. Does that answer what you asked?
It does, and I appreciate that answer. Well, is there more?
No.
I think Maria might have another.
No. You can only look into that crystal ball to a certain degree. So
Yeah.
our decision this evening has to do with the extension of the time frame. I'd like to hear from other board members on this. Anyone else? Well, we know how Caper feels, but other thoughts?
I'm not sure you do, but.
Okay.
No, I think I do.
Okay, no, I appreciate the difficulties that your client faced. My point was that the standard is for good cause shown, and I didn't question what you said about COVID, but what I didn't see was evidence or analysis or how that tied to your business, and so I don't have confidence that it's been thoroughly thought through. I have no objection to extending the permit to having you move forward, because I think something needs to be done with that property, and I think it was a good idea when you came up with it. I'm not in that business. I'm not a developer. I'm not in a position to analyze whether or not it will succeed. I hope that your client has done that analysis, and I hope that they're successful in that endeavor.
Thank you.
So I am inclined to vote to give you the extension that you asked for, but I do not feel that you met the legal standard, and I know that I'm focusing on a completely different aspect than our counsel or you, but I think it's for good cause shown, which puts the burden on the applicant, and I do not feel that you have met your burden.
And I did want to say, Caper, that I do appreciate your comments relative to what should be a comprehensive nature for land use planning as well as cumulative impact. Jamie?
So, given the discussion by the applicant's counsel and the discussion of the planning board, I think there's potentially two considerations in the motion, and one is per the applicant's request in their actual application as modified, and again, based on testimony he received and a commitment he made this evening on behalf of his client. In a discussion for a draft, per the request by and commitment from the applicant, the planning board motions to approve an extension to December 31st, 2026. And as part of and in support of the extension, commit to repair the wall by restoring the cut granite blocks in a manner to fit back in their original locations in the wall, in a manner to restore and stabilize the wall by December 31st, 2027. 2022 years for the wall restoration.
So that's 2 years. All right. Do you want me to make that motion then, or?
I just want to be sure that other planning board members have had an
I think
opportunity to speak.
Jamie accurately summarized, what we're committing to do.
Any other thoughts from board members? Would someone then like to make the motion that Jamie has suggested? We have a motion from Joe. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
A second from Susan. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair, just for clarification, I may have an extra "and" in what I read, so it may be a slight modification grammatically in that motion.
I think that's fine. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I'll
Nays?
support that.
Abstentions?
I'm an aye.
One abstention. Thank you.
Mr. Monaco abstained.
Yes, no.
Thank you.
Thank you.
See you next year.
Next agenda item is a public hearing, administrative subdivision and unified development review, Jaber Administrative Subdivision. Is there anyone representing the applicant?
Good evening. My name,
Before you go, just for note, Mr. Murphy has recused himself from this item.
thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name's Sheree Jackson from Jackson Surveying. I'm a licensed professional engineer and licensed professional land surveyor. I'm assisting the applicants tonight to get through the Planning Commission for an administrative subdivision with a zoning for, under the Unified Review. I don't believe I need to go into much detail. I'm here to answer questions. I think I can pretty much let the record of the summary from the zoning official and the summary from the planner's memo and my own narrative kind of speak for itself. But basically, we are moving the lot lines to allow for the existing uses, like backing out of driveways and garages onto property owned for the dwelling units. In doing such, we looked at numerous examples of and scenarios of how we could, make that accomplished. And this is a scenario that we chose that is most fitting. And we're here for a zoning variance because we're officially making one lot less conforming because we're swapping the frontage, but the areas are staying. We're actually making other items like setbacks and stuff more conforming. And this is normally done administratively, but because of the variance, we're here tonight in front of the Planning Commission.
Thank you. Questions from board members? Susan?
Hi, I have one question for you. So the house in the back seems to have a leach field in the backyard. Are both of these houses now on sewer?
Let me double check with the applicants. They are here tonight. If I'm correct, they're both now on sewer. Yes, they are both on sewer.
Okay, because I was going to ask where the leach field was for the front house.
No, they're both, yep.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
I'm just not clear. Under the proposed, if you look at the lots as you've proposed the change, what is the side yard from the existing house on Lot 33?
Oh, okay.
What's the dimension of that?
To which direction? And you want the proposed distance, is that correct? Okay, yep, let's grab my letter. The east sideline is going to be 31.6 feet.
And am I correct in my understanding after reading through your description was that part of the configuration of this lot was probably caused by a taking by the state to build US Route 1?
That's correct. Lot 34 used to be the same shape as Lot 33, long and rectangular, about 80-foot width. And then when the highway came through, it took about 30 feet of that width.
And the property's been under one ownership, the two lots have been under?
They've been in the Jaber family together, yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Susan?
So I have another question. Sure. So you've implied in this letter that your client may be selling one of the lots?
That is correct. As part of the estate, they'd like to try to sell Lot 34.
Okay. So also in the letter, it states, provide more privacy from potential new structures or uses. Is there also a plan to change, knock down, change anything here?
Not by the Jaber family. It was for the purpose of not knowing who the next owner would be and having more rear lot where potentially an ADU could go up or something, and then it'd be restrictive to let somebody be able to back out of the existing house. So it was from a point of view of not knowing what the next owner might do, having more privacy. The Jaber family's not proposing to make any changes.
Any further comments, questions? Jamie, anything from staff?
Madam Chair, you do have a memo from Mark Convoy dated October 27th. It lists that's Saugatuck Acres. It lists 4 items that could be rolled into a motion or handled by the administrative officer during final approval. It was handed out by
It's
Mr. Wagner
a memo we
tonight.
received this evening.
Is this different than the planner's memo?
This is from Department of Public Services.
I do not have a copy of that.
Mark, would you like to go over this? Just,
The first 2 comments are just corrections as far as what is written for parcel A. Parcel A and the driveway easement notation should be corrected to read, the shaded area is to be conveyed from lot 33 to lot 34. It's written backwards on the plan. It's
Thank you for pointing that out. I will make that change to the
okay,
plan.
and parcel B is the same way.
Okay.
It's backwards, the notation. So that's just a correction that needs to be completed. Number 3, the water and sewer services for both lots 33 and 34 should be located and shown on the plan. The reason why is there's an ordinance as far as the utilities that you can't have, which goes into the 4th comment. It appears that the existing water service for Lot 33 will be within the area to be conveyed from Lot 33 to Lot 34. However, in Section 19-228 of the ordinance, it states that water service pipes shall not cross intervening properties. And when I talked to Veolia Water, they stated that the water service that's not shown on the plan for Lot 33 is most likely within that shaded area of parcel A.
Do you recall if it's on the west or east side of, to the top of the page or the bottom of the page on the driveway?
Oh, it would be on the, if you're looking at that on the right-hand side,
Right, okay.
parcel A. So it appears that it's probably about 18 feet off the existing property line. So that would be within that 25-foot easement.
Okay. I was unaware of that ordinance, so we will have to locate the curb stop and determine where that water line is. I'm just thinking off the cuff of my head right now, so excuse me. I'm just wondering, is there a way to not have to come back, to make the change and not have to come back?
this could be, these requirements could be a part of conditions of approval. They could be
And
added.
then maintain that they stay with the administrative officer. If frontage perhaps changes, I'm not allowed to do that, right?
Jamie?
Madam Chair, I think if you were putting these in as part of the conditions, that when staff reviews, if it's a slight adjustment to a property line, it would be considered minor in nature and under the authority of the administrative officer, unless Attorney Schwartz tells me different this evening, that, again, you could potentially look at the draft motion, incorporate the 4 items contained in Mr. Convoy's memorandum dated October 27, 2025, and any revisions would be incorporated into final plan review.
Thanks, Jamie. Are there comments or questions on this? It's a fairly straightforward request. If there are no further questions, we have a motion that begins on page 4 with the additional condition to incorporate the comments in the memo from Mark Convoy dated October 27th, 2025.
May I interrupt just quickly, Chair? Items, findings of fact, E and F, I don't believe they're this project. One says Saugatucket Road, and one says in front of a technical review committee. Thank you.
I'd probably blame AI again, but
I
think there's another AI issue.
Or a cut and paste issue, perhaps.
There's another, one of those AI issues and findings of fact, J, the change in the boundary will not create any.
Oh, right. Any what?
I don't dispute that it won't create any, but I'm not sure what I'm talking about here.
Jamie, do you have some language that could be inserted?
The change in the boundary will not create any complications associated with the overall development of the property.
So with Mr. Conboy's comments, does this also potentially mean that the sewer line is running across that same pathway as the water line, and that the sewer also needs to be included with the water in that memo?
I believe it does it not?
I'm not sure if the sewer lateral goes through that easement or not. I kind of think that it does not, but I can't be sure of that.
Yeah, we'll have to, just looking at the plan, seeing where the sewer manhole is on the plan, which is above the A in Narragansett there, the S, normally they're a straight shot to the house, which means it would miss the easement. But we're going to definitely look at both services.
So we have an amended motion that includes a reference under findings of fact to Narragansett Ave West, and findings of fact with regard to dimensional variance, with regard to the overall development of the property that will not create any complications that create any difficulties. And then under conditions of approval, the third item, which will incorporate the memo from Mark Conboy. Does anyone have anything else to add? Would someone like to make the motion as amended?
I'll second it.
We have a motion from Armand. We have a second from Caper. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you very much.
We have not closed the public hearing on this. Peter? According to the agenda, it
Yeah.
says public hearing for this, even though it's administrative. Okay.
Yes, that did require a public hearing. So,
Yes.
Well, they made a motion to approve. So.
He's going to get her.
Oh, goodness.
Yes. It's odd to have an administrative subdivision that involves a public hearing.
Yeah, because of the unified, yep.
Right.
So,
Is there anyone here who wishes to speak to this project? Hearing none, would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
Motion from Caper, second from Susan. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next agenda item, major subdivision preliminary plan with unified development review, Saugatucket Acres. This is a public hearing as well. Is there anyone representing the applicant?
Yes, and good evening. Michael Monty from Sayer, Regan & Thayer on behalf of the applicant and owner, JAE Mills, LLC. So this is an application for a subdivision on an approximately 10-acre parcel on Saugatucket Road off Route 1. It's 9.44 acres, and it's for just a 5-lot subdivision. So it's not a great degree of density, and that's mostly the result of the fact that the back of the lot is predominantly wet.
Yes.
So we were before the board in February of 2024 for a concept review, and then before the board again in July of 2024 for master plan, where we received unanimous approval from this board. We're now seeking preliminary plan approval for the project. All of our engineering came back positive, including our freshwater wetland permit from DEM. So I'm just going to give some high-level details of the project, and then I'm also going to be joined by Chris Duhamel of Deprete Engineering. I also have an owner's representative with me here tonight as well, so to the extent there's any technical questions about the development itself, we can answer those to the extent that I can't provide that context. So if we just look at the site plans, and I don't know if we can put them on the screen as well, they would have been the site plans dated September. On sheet 6 of the site plans, you can see that it's a 5-lot subdivision, and it's taking advantage of the flexible frontage zoning ordinance. So 3 of the lots will have frontage that don't meet the ordinary requirement. And again, this is due to the unique characteristics of the lot and the fact that the rear of the 9.44 acre parcel is wet. I don't think this is the...
It is not.
So, this looks like perhaps the project after ours.
And while we're waiting, I just would like to clarify, although the staff memo states Saugatucket Acres preliminary on the agenda, it is mislabeled as, no, this is preliminary, but somewhere I saw that this was, it's on the staff memo, it says conceptual master plan, but the agenda is correct, just so everyone is on the same page here.
Well, to the extent folks have the plan set in front of them, if you look at sheet 6, you can see that the proposal here is to have one curb cut,
Look at yours.
which is the existing curb cut at the property, and this will serve as the access for the entire development, and then you'll be able to access each of the individual lots from this shared area. One of the big concerns at master plan and before the technical review committee in past hearings was that the boards really wanted to know, hey, you need to spell out for us precisely how this is going to work. So we did submit some very detailed documentation to that effect. So you'll also have in your packets a set of restrictive covenants, easements, and reservations that provide the concrete legal basis and description for how that crosshatched area is going to work. So it will be governed by an HOA that will have the total responsibility for maintenance over that specific area. There'll be mutual easements for access as appropriate so that you can go over the lots that aren't yours if you live in that development. You'll also see in the sort of more to the bottom right of the screen, there's a drainage basin, and that is for that shared area that's crosshatched in the center, the ingress and egress area, and that will also be maintained by the HOA, and that's set forth in the detailed restrictive covenants, reservations, and HOA. So those were just some facts that were important in past hearings that I wanted to highlight. The upshot really is that, we have almost 10 acres and it's a 5-lot subdivision. So, the impact of this development is relatively minor relative to the overall land area. Other items I wanted to highlight, it was important in past hearings that we indicate on the plans that these 2 prominent trees right at the entryway of the development are going to be preserved to the extent that they can be. I think one tree certainly can be preserved, the other may need to be replaced in kind, and the most updated plans do make that notation. Later this evening, Chris Duhamel is also going to speak to the landscape plan that we've submitted, which I believe is sheet 10 in the plan set, and so there are going to be some maples on Saugatucket Road, so there will be some screening, and the entry roadways do kind of have sort of to some extent, a meandering feature which was considered desirable in previous hearings. One other question that came up frequently in past hearings was, is your client, the developer, going to sell after this approval, or do they plan to build themselves? So my client intends to sell the lots individually, should we get final plan approval, and to consumers offer to build them themselves, or they can select their own builder. So my client is a builder capable of building these lots. However, to the extent someone wants to buy it and use their own builder, we're not going to prevent folks from doing that. And the restrictive covenants and the detailed legal documentation, however, does allow the declarant, my client, architectural control over the development. So to the extent it's a different builder, those plans would have to be submitted to our client in advance for approval, and that's set forth in the legal documents. Another question that was came up frequently in past hearings was the phasing plan, and I've confirmed with my client that the shared infrastructure is going to be built first, as it needs to be. The plan really doesn't work any other way. So that's really all I had by way of introduction. Unless there are particular questions for me, I'd like to have Chris Duhamel come up and just walk us through the site plan and detailed engineering.
And before you proceed, just wondering if you have the memo from DPS that was received this evening?
Which
If
I
not,
just
we'll
want to
make
make sure I know which memo you're referring to. I have a lot of material. May I?
Madam Chair, as council's reviewing that for the applicant, I would propose that in any favorable motion that the town engineer's comments are rolled into the staff memo as items number 9, 10, 11, 12, and 13. In essence, number 9 would be the proposed permanent buffer zone markers shown on sheets 6 and 7 shall be shown on the record plan. Buffer markers must be installed prior to the commencement of any site alterations. 10, the storm water facility maintenance agreement shall be submitted, reviewed, and approved by the administrative officer in consultation with the Department of Public Service prior to recording of the final plans. 11, a soil erosion, runoff, and sediment control permit shall be required for each house lot. 12, an approved South Kingstown physical alteration permit, PAP, permit shall be required prior to construction. And 13, the proposed water service must be approved by Veolia Water.
So I had not previously reviewed that, but I have now. We have no objection to those additional conditions, and we've also reviewed the original staff memo dated from a few days ago and have no objections to any of the conditions in that memorandum.
Very good.
Shall I have Chris
Yes, please
come up now?
continue.
Excellent. Chris.
Thank you. My name is Chris Duhamel, professional engineer and land surveyor with DePreet Engineering. We're here for the preliminary plan submission of Saugatucket Acres. This project had received, as Attorney Monty has stated, master plan approval in July 2024, and the preliminary plan very closely mirrors what that preliminary master plan approval required. The design of the site with 5 lots to have a minimum net buildable acreage of 40,000 square foot has been maintained. Design of access to the lots through one singular driveway curb cut, and the location of the existing driveway curb cut on site has been designed. The lots would be serviced by public water with individual services to the Viola water main. Those have been approved. The individual septic systems for 4-bedroom OWTS utilizing denitrification technology has been approved by DEM as a site suitability. The home configurations as requested by the planning board in the master plan to have all the homes face Saugatucket Road has been achieved. The homes that are shown on the site are substantial. They're 30 by 50 foot, 1,500 foot homes with 2-car garages. So there is room for expansion, even though these houses are substantial. We've designed the drainage system to have dry wells for each home conforming to RIDM requirements. We've designed the stormwater management system to meet best management practices of the runoff from the proposed single driveway entering the site for access. We've received RIDM approval of the stormwater system to mitigate the stormwater runoff for the 1 to 100 year storm to pre-development levels. We have a maintenance and homeowners association that would be responsible for that maintenance. That would be part of the requirements of the homeowners association for continued use with responsible oversight, reporting and oversight to the town public services division.
Chris, I think one thing folks might be interested in is also the landscape plan as well. Could you speak a little bit to that? I think it's sheet 11.
The landscape plan is essentially to preserve the streetscape of Saugatucket Road along the frontage. There's again one proposed driveway onto the site. We're providing for 7 street trees along the frontage. We're maintaining the stone wall that exists on site. If there's any disturbance due to the construction of a water service, that would have to be rebuilt. That might happen on lots 4 and 5, but the other water services are in an open area where there is no stone wall. So we're maintaining the stone wall. We have street trees that are called out by our landscape architect as October Glory street trees coming onto the site with a shared driveway. We have additional street trees of cherry, crabapple, and birch to meet the fire department safety turnaround in the excuse me, in the hammerhead. We've expanded the drivable area with grass, turf, reinforcement that would allow for the fire truck to make that turn. That area can be maintained with plowing and keeping the emergency access in open state. Since the preliminary plan was submitted, we went to the technical review committee, and there was a number of concerns or questions that were raised. One was having a no-cut easement along the frontage of Saugatuck Road. Essentially, lots 1 and 5 have frontage. There's a restriction on those lots in the record plan that would say that there's no further curb cuts that are to be allowed, that they would all have to utilize the shared driveway easement. The homeowner maintenance requirements for the drainage system has been reinforced and submitted. The soil and erosion control sequence of construction would be built for the entire lot, not just one lot at a time. All the infrastructure, as Attorney Monti has stated, would be built in Phase 1 before the construction of additional lots. The specimen trees that were preserved within the entrance driveway, if deemed required to be replaced, they'd be replaced in kind. And more significantly, the water services were moved to the frontage of each lot. There still be single services for each lot, but as Viola Water has approved them, but they would be now moved so that they're corresponding with the lot lines and not transferring to the, the shared easement. So we have a DM approval, we have Viola Water approval, we have OWTS approval, DM Stormwater, OWTS, and Viola Water. And we're here to answer any questions that the planning board
Questions,
might
comments
have.
from board members? I wanted to ask you about the two trees that you referenced early on. One's an oak, I believe, and the other's a maple. How and when will their survival or not be determined? And what tree protection measures will be put in place to ensure the survival of any that are deemed appropriate?
It's going to be a concerted effort that's going to have to be made. Besides the DOT fencing that they put around it, the construction within the drip line is going to have to be carefully made. The water services that are going to be brought to the rear lots 2 and lots 3, are going to have to be carefully made. It's not anticipated that we would be within the drip line, but on site we'll make certain that occurs. And then evaluation of the tree health itself would be through our landscape architect or the town's arborist. And if it's deemed that one of the trees, as the planning staff has noted, can't be saved, then it'll have to be replaced.
And we do have tree protection standards that you can incorporate. And you said replacement in kind, does that mean the same caliper?
That's impossible, but...
So a little more information would be helpful on that.
Yeah, the same as the street trees that are being presented, a 3-inch caliper.
2.5 to 3 inch, that's pretty small. Jamie, comments on which of the trees are they referencing that is unlikely to survive? Is it the larger oak or the maple?
So I think there are 2 associated with the construction of the driveway.
Correct.
And I think they're in various, there may be a variation and a difference of opinion on survivability of those. I think one of the trees has lost its main leader, it has lost some of its other branching aspects. So it's one of those items that during construction, disturbance, compaction in the area, even if you do drip line protection, these are somewhat older trees that, given the nature of the development, as we go through the development process, sometimes in order to bring something better in the future, you have to take away from the past. And, but again, do you save, we'll use a professional planning terminology, to save the deciduous Charlie Brown tree because it's older and represents a generational aspect, and do you replace it with a more appropriate tree that becomes that older generational specimen tree? These aren't majestic trees with full canopy that you would see on some of the estate properties, either in South Kingstown or Newport County. These have seen better times. So again, I think some decisions need to be made in the field as they go through construction. What the applicant's telling you this evening is they're committed to replace them in kind. I think our initial discussions were that if you take down a older tree, you're not replacing it with an 1.5-inch caliber, that the trees that would be replaced would be specimen style trees in the 3 to 4 inch caliber range, not starting from 1 inch.
And you weren't specific, the tree that is closest to the entrance, I believe, is the oak and the other is the maple. Which one of those did you say was in poor condition?
Let me double check my files.
I think it's the back.
Unless you folks
Maple?
have that answer.
We believe it's the maple, the one further from the street.
Okay.
But we're happy to have that confirmed. And we'd also be happy to work with the tree warden prior to final plan approval.
Very good, and you heard the Director of Planning suggestion that it's 3 to 4 inch caliper rather than 2.5, which is what the others are, 2.5 to 3. And while Jamie's researching that, are there other questions from board members for the applicant? Joe?
Not really questions, I think more just some comments and ask for their consideration on those. But this is not unlike another project that we've had before us fairly recently. And the comments on that, and I think our concerns on that, is that Saugatucket Road is kind of this nice rural country road that you got single-family houses on single-family lots. You don't really even see a subdivision until you hit Watson Farm. And trying to maintain that character, I think, is something that is desirable. With that said, one of the things we had asked for this consideration from the other project was to make that entranceway as subtle as possible, narrow width, vegetation that kind of provides screening. Right now, you got one common access that goes straight in, and then you got this large turnaround. So I mean, I personally would rather see maybe that entranceway, maybe if possible, can make it a little more subtle. Maybe make it a little bit of a turn in it, maybe put some natural screening in front of where that turnaround is, not necessarily trees that are lined up in a row, but maybe something that looks like just natural woods, so that that's not, you don't have the appearance there. Maybe some natural screening on property lines between the houses, so it doesn't look like a subdivision. And I think Jamie's going to tell me that I'm asking for too much from a regulatory point of view. However, you are asking for a variance, and that variance, to have that minimum, requires that you show that this is a better design. And I think taking consideration of preserving the surrounding neighborhood and its design is a valid request. So.
We did prove that at master plan, or the planning board did agree to that at master plan, that this flexible design is preferred over a subdivision for the same number of lots. We have a 20-foot wide driveway. It's not 24 feet, so it is restricted 10-foot lanes in that area. We're maintaining the two specimen trees within that corridor, if you will. If we could put additional trees on the other side, if that's helpful.
I think on the other project, I think we had looked at going down to 18 feet with some reinforcements on either side. And as far as the trees go, there certainly are board members that are more knowledgeable in landscaping. But what you have here, in my opinion, doesn't necessarily give it a natural kind of a woody appearance, but more of a subdivision with some nice, well-planned trees. And also, I'm not sure if it's possible or not to have the garage doors facing other than directly towards the entranceway. So those are the things I'd ask maybe some of my board members who much more on landscaping to take into consideration, provide comment on.
I certainly agree with Joe. This is a common request. It enhances the project. It makes it fit in with the general area. You have a landscape architect who, although She is not here this evening.
No.
I'm sure more than capable to add to this, to make the entrance more appropriate and fit in.
Okay, we can add additional
Great.
landscaping, we can reduce the road width to 18 feet, that's not a safety issue, if this board wants that.
Thank you. Susan? No?
Just taking off from what Joe said about having the entrance be, I don't know if softer is the right word, more appropriate maybe, even if there could be a gentle curve coming in once you pass Lot 1 and Lot 5, instead of this harsh, direct road, if it could even be gently turned, just ever so slightly, I think that that would do a lot to soften the appearance of a road coming in.
Yeah, we would need to curve it to the to the west because of the specimen trees. We couldn't get closer to those. So we could push it over. The wall, the stone wall is something.
And it is an existing curb cut, and I think.
Oh, no, I'm not suggesting that you change the curb cut. It's once you're in to the site that it's not like a straight shot, like going.
Well, I don't think it is a straight shot because there are, as you move further in, there are curvatures, and I don't think that should be overlooked.
All right, just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Susan?
Hi, so I have some questions too. So Joe had mentioned the entrance, and I do agree very much with what Joe said, especially if we lose that glorious oak tree and all we've put in its stead is a 12-foot high replacement tree, you'll essentially have no landscaping at the entrance. Like, that oak tree is something. But if it doesn't survive this, it will be a fairly barren entrance there with just one replacement tree where that oak is. So I would like to see something planted along that entrance. And furthermore, all of the trees that you are proposing, you've got some good trees here, but they're all in the front half of the lot, and the lot is a big open meadow with no other trees on it. So I'm concerned that when you get to the hammerhead, entrance, the end of that hammerhead entrance, you've got a couple of trees there and then nothing else throughout the whole rest of the site. And I realize it's up to individual homeowners to hopefully plant some stuff, but if they didn't, that would be a darn shame. So if there's some way to just not shield the view, but just beef it up a little bit so that should those back 3 lots choose not to plant any vegetation around their houses, that there's something to soften that view from Saugatucket Road. I would be happier to see that. And I'd also like to ask about the stone wall. Right now it's overgrown with all kinds of stuff. Are you planning to leave it in that natural state or clean out to expose the stone wall along the frontage?
Do you prefer it in its natural state, or do you prefer it to be enhanced?
Even if it's all weedy and woody, I prefer it in its natural state, but you also have a 5-lot subdivision going in, a couple of doors down the road. They are leaving their stone wall covered with foxgrape and all kinds of brambles.
I think we're happy to do whatever the preference of the board is in that regard with respect to the stone wall.
That's what we like to hear.
For me,
So,
I like it the way it
We'll
is.
keep it in its natural state, certainly.
You're also across the street, and we've talked about this before, from the most lovely house across the street. And in the spirit of approving the landscaping and the architecture of houses that go in, I hope you'll look across the street at Ms. Case's house, because it is very, very nice, very historic. I would like to ask about the home on lot number 4, and if that drainage infrastructure is 15 feet from the back door of that house, and if there's a way to configure that lot or something else, because, their front yard is their driveway and their backyard is a drainage structure, and I don't know, is there a way to make that more enticing for that homeowner?
the pond complex is
Yeah,
fairly large.
I see what you're saying. It's a tight fit there, and they could certainly, they'd have some flexibility with respect to how they could configure that home, but I'm afraid that any small change we make has ramifications throughout every lot. So
Yeah.
I don't think there is. I
Okay.
think it would require re-engineering that at this point, I don't think is feasible.
These are not custom homes, which is this type of development lends itself to. So each homeowner or the client will have a different not lot configuration, home configuration, driveway location, garage location, possible pools. The more you get involved, the more effort it is. The drainage is going to be built as approved by DEM. There's nothing we can do about that. There's other buildable areas on Lot 4 that can be utilized for a different shaped house. The house could be moved forward within the buildable envelope. The garage could move west. So
The size of the garage could be reduced.
there's all sorts of opportunity on Lot 4.
Okay. Yeah, that's,
Yeah, that's a tight spot.
it's up
but-
to you. For me, that's just kind of a funny layout.
Yep. And part of the reason you see the way we configured this was in part to make sure that the buildable lot areas would make it so that folks had to build with their front of the house facing Saugatucket Road.
Which I appreciate.
So, to an extent, the fact that they are sort of tight fits in terms of what they can build
Yeah.
makes it so that they'll basically have to build with the fronts facing Saugatucket. So
Okay.
we did try to be sensitive to that. And I do think, this site is largely an open field right now. And I think when you drive down Saugatucket, you've got 10 acres and it's only 5 houses on the 10 acres. And there will be, the stone wall in its natural state, these new trees at the front of the lot, the existing trees, to the extent the two can survive. I think the visual impact is going to be relatively minor when taking into account all of those things.
All right.
And we can certainly add more trees, but we got birch and crabapple at the back of that hammerhead that shields the development behind the hammerhead, so we can look to put more.
That's all my questions. Thank you very much.
And you know that all these trees are deciduous in nature, correct?
I know they're popular. Everyone
It
loves
means
birch
they're
trees.
not conifers,
Put
they're
lights
not
on them,
evergreen.
it's Christmas, it's going to be great.
Other comments from board members?
I have a question
Go
for
ahead,
council. I just want to be clear that the common entry grounds, or perhaps also identified as the accessing utility easements, are to be maintained exclusively by the homeowners association and not by the town?
Yeah, as part of the final plan approval, the next stage after this one, they're going to have to submit their homeowners association documents, and, we're going to require that the primary responsibility for that is going to be, or the responsibility for that is going to be on the homeowners association. We do like to have some type of language in there, giving the town the ability to go in and enforce if it needs to, if it feels it's not being maintained. But the responsibility to maintain that would be the homeowners association.
Okay. And we talked earlier about the joys of AI, and I suggest that somebody proofread the Declaration of Restrictions and Protective Covenants. I'm particularly fond of paragraph 3 on page 2, the final sentence. No outstanding of any king, including leaves and law debris, shall be allowed. I think the phrase law debris is priceless, and it should be left in there. But that's just my personal opinion. But I also have a question about your stormwater system operation and maintenance plan.
Sure.
It's just not clear to me what this document is, or to what extent it's imposing obligations on anyone. So if you could just help me understand what the document is?
Sure, it's meant to identify responsible parties and what the requirements are for maintenance of the stormwater system, to keep woody vegetation out of the infiltration basins, to cut the grass twice a year, to sweep the roads.
It certainly delineates an awful lot of things about proper maintenance, and it called me to task in some items about how I care for my home. But I'm just not clear that it's really imposing any obligations on anyone. I mean, it says it can be used as a, this report, the page 1, last paragraph, this report is suitable for recording as an attachment to a maintenance agreement between the site owner and the responsible authority. Certain things about it seem to be delineating things that should be the homeowner's responsibilities. I'm just not clear, is this sort of a nice to know and nice to live by, or are we expecting that someone's actually going to abide by the
It's
the
a requirement.
suggestions?
It's a requirement for the DEM permit to mitigate the stormwater, to improve the water quality, and to maintain that more than since it's built, so.
And I think one thing we can do as our legal documents are going to be reviewed,
Right.
we're required to submit them to get before you before preliminary, but we can make sure that our restrictive covenants and easements make reference to the plan.
So
and-
basically, you will build it out so that somebody has responsibility for it.
Right,
Got it.
so if we make a reference to the plan in that document, which I see you have in front of you, then it will all speak to one another, and I'll work on that with Peter before the final plan is recorded.
I can actually answer that question.
Okay.
As part of the final legal documents, we generally require a stormwater agreement to which that plan is attached as an exhibit, requiring the homeowners to acknowledge that maintenance requirement is their responsibility and not the town's responsibility, and to give the town access to that stormwater feature for inspection to make sure that it is being maintained in accordance with the maintenance agreement, and to agree that if it's not, we can perform the maintenance at the owner's expense.
Yes, and you'll see as well in the draft legal document, some of the restrictions are the declarant enforced restrictions, and then there's an entire another section that are restrictions imposed by both the town and declarant, and then the town has the ability to enforce that entire section. So we can weave it all together before it's recorded.
Thank you.
And just to add to Caper's thoughts, the inspection and maintenance, particularly on page 6 and 7, are well thought out and very thorough. So obviously, we want to see those conditions continue on. Susan?
I have one question. I have one question, which is sort of an aside here. It's interesting that you've provided us with the homeowners association document, but I find it interesting that you're selling large 4-bedroom family homes and limiting a family to 2 pets, a cat and a dog, or 2 of each. Is that something that can be legally imposed upon a family buying $1 million house?
Absolutely. However,
like I'm no psychopath, but at the moment I've got 5.
The reason the way this document was generated, a lot of time went into it, especially with respect to sort of the niche provisions. But there was a development that this board and community recently approved in very close proximity. And what we did was we took the documents that they submitted to this board and mirrored them. And those did end up getting recorded in the land evidence records. Now, I have no doubt my client has very little preference as to how many pets live in there, but it's the type of thing you commonly see in these documents. But if it's not preferred by this board, we can take it out. I'm not saying it's the last project. I'm just, in the past several years, a project nearby was approved, and they submitted legal documents that were nearly identical to this one.
It's immaterial to me if you impose this upon your people.
Yes.
But for me, this would be like a deal breaker. Like, I have a house full,
Good
and
to
that's the
know.
way we like it.
Good to know.
If there are no further questions, comments from board members, this is a public hearing. Is there anyone who wishes to speak on this item? Would someone like to make a motion to close the public hearing?
I'll make that motion.
We have a motion from Caper. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second from Joe. Any further discussion?
The only thing I would say is that, we're talking about 5 houses on 10 acres, but by right, each of those houses have the right to build an ADU, which could up to 1,200 square feet or 1,250 square feet. So when we're looking at that vegetation and the impact to the surrounding area, we got to realize that by right, they could be up to 10 structures and without coming back to this board. So I think we really do need to scrutinize that landscaping well.
Anything else? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Public hearing is closed. We have a motion that begins on
Page 3, Madam Chair.
some of these pages are upside down. I don't know why, but. We also have a memo received this evening from Mark Comboy, Town Engineer. And we have discussed some additional items to be added to the motion. The first one is streetscape, entrance, additional plantings to create a softer entrance. You have a landscape architect. There would be appropriate trees and shrubs that could be added, things like rhododendrons and so on, particularly if they have more of a seasonal perspective, meaning not deciduous. Tree protection standards relative to the 2 trees, the oak and the maple adjacent to the entrance. Jamie, what else?
I think there was some discussion about reducing the width of the driveway to, I think Joe mentioned
Yes.
18 feet. I think what we've done in the past with a sign off by the fire marshal to go to 16 feet for the primary driveway. This doesn't include the apron. The apron has to be a specific width per DOT standards for this type of use. But once you come internal to the property, 16 feet with 2-foot load-bearing shoulders, which actually gives you that 20-foot National Fire Protection Code width for traveled way.
And the applicant has seen the memo and agreed to the 5 items contained within the memo from DPS, which relates to permanent buffer zone markers, the stormwater maintenance agreement finalized and recorded, soil erosion runoff and sediment control permit must be required for each house lot, approved South Kingstown physical alteration permit shall be required prior to construction, and water services must be approved by Veolia Water. Is there anything else that folks feel should be added to this motion? If there are none, would someone like to make a motion to approve this amended motion?
I guess I'll make that motion to make that motion as amended, based on our discussion and as summarized by Maria.
That's always been past practice.
The South Kingstown Planning Board hereby grants preliminary plan approval for Saugatucket Acres, a 5-lot major flexible frontage subdivision for single-family development located at 176 Saugatucket Road. JAE Mills LLC, owner applicant. The approval is based on the plan entitled Preliminary Submission, Saugatucket Acres, 176 Saugatucket Road, South Kingstown, Rhode Island. Assessors plat 42, Lot 9, Sheet 1 through 11, revisions through August 5th, 2025, prepared by Dupree Engineering, Inc., 2 Stafford Court, Cranston. The approval is based on the following findings of fact and conditions of approval. Findings of fact A through F, findings of fact in regard to waivers G through H, conditions of approval 1 through 8 as in the staff memo, and the additional conditions of approval as added by our discussion.
If I may, so the revisions are through September, I believe, 9th, not August 5th, because the plan was submitted. So the plan you're reviewing is a September plan. So I felt like that was material to
Yes,
mention.
thank you. We have a motion from Joe. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Second from, I think Liz got that one. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Nays, abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you.
Generally, 2 hours into our meeting, the planning board takes a 5-minute break. It is almost that time, so we will return in 5 minutes. So it's going to be up to you and their landscape architect to develop that entranceway, and,
like
I would certainly
had a
like to
note
have a
on
look
that.
if you don't mind
Yeah.
when that happens. But
At a minimum, 4 additional street trees. If you looked at the site plan, they can go
We are continuing on to our next agenda item. This is a public hearing, major land development, conceptual master plan, comprehensive permit, lots on fairgrounds. Is there anyone representing the applicant?
Good evening. Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the board. For the record, my name is Eleanor Salvatore. Thank you. As you just suggested, we are here for a conceptual master plan stage of review for a comprehensive permit application to construct 311 dwelling units on the property consisting of a mix of studio apartments, 1 and 2 bedroom units. We did meet with you for a pre-application, and at that time, we told you that this residential community is geared towards adults, including employees of NORPAC, located on site, local employers, and those individuals who want to use the train to travel to their jobs. We expect young professionals, including teachers, nurses, URI employees, police, firefighters, public employees, and perhaps seniors looking to downsize as some of the residents. We think this is an appropriate location for density, being located near a train station and some larger employers, including URI and South County Hospital. We are proposing 78 LMI units, which is a significant contribution to your 10% goal, where the 2025 Housing Work Factbook reports that the town needs 497 additional LMI units. I was just talking to Melina Lodge, who I'm sure most of you know, and she reminded me that you have probably at least 26 LMI units in the pipeline, so I wanted to acknowledge that. Tonight, we have several people to present to you. We have our civil engineer, Eric Prevey, our architect, David Berryman, our landscape architect, Diane Sewell. We have a fiscal analysis that will be presented by Joe Lombardo. We have a land use expert, Doug McLean, and a traffic engineer, Paul Bannon. Also with us are the owner's representatives, Jonathan Fox and Nathaniel Sharondoff, if there are any questions for them, as well as monitoring agent Melina Lodge, who can also respond to questions and comments about low and moderate income housing and her role in monitoring the LMI units. We are seeking adjustments from the zoning ordinance and development regulations, generally relating to density, landscaping, and setbacks or buffers that are described in my letter to the board dated September 25th, and your staff's project review memo, and which will be described in more detail as we present the proposal tonight. We also requested a waiver from the requirement to submit the letter of eligibility from Rhode Island Housing. I can tell you that we no longer need that waiver because we did, in fact, receive the letter of eligibility, I think last week, and it was submitted to staff. Just reporting to you, of course, we had the pre-application meeting on March 25th. We also had a neighborhood meeting on September 10th, where we actually invited more than just the neighborhood that we have to notify of this meeting. We went all the way to 138, to the west side of 138, and we went down Fairgrounds Road to include all the businesses. So we had quite a group attend a neighborhood meeting. We've also had several meetings with planning staff, the town manager, and others, and we did our best to gather input, and we have responded, as will be discussed tonight. So with that, we will have Eric Prevey present the proposal first. And Madam Chair, I don't know if your board generally qualifies experts in these types of hearings?
We do not. We're not the zoning board of review.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Good evening. For the record, my name is Eric Prevey, P-R-I-V as in Victor. I am a registered professional engineer with DePrete Engineering. Office is at 2 Stafford Court in Cranston, Rhode Island. I'd like to kind of take you to the site. This is actually a perfect one to start on and progress through with the iterations of how to get here. So again, just making sure everybody knows where we are. The property is located at 132 Fairgrounds Road. It's known as Assessor's Plat 21-3. Lot number 9. It's a 20.22 acre parcel, so 20 acre parcel, and it's zoned industrial 1. There's adjacent R20 uses, so residential 20,000 square feet, half-acre lots to the northeast corner for Chickashin Way. Yep, thank you for showing that area. Yep, so those are R20 residential zoned directly to the northeast of us between where the property is located and Route 138 over there. The property itself has a large industrial building on it. It's formerly American Power Conversion, which was then Schneider Electric. It is actually, and is now NORPAC, currently functioning as NORPAC. But the building itself is a 188,800 square foot building, so it's a 4.3 acre building, just to put that in a magnitude of what you're looking at from the aerial there as well. There are 3 curb cuts that are located along Fairgrounds Road. So there's, again, from the northeast corner, one somewhat central, and then one towards the southwest corner as well. So 3 curb cuts on Fairgrounds Road today. There are existing utilities, public municipal activities, utilities in the area, so sanitary sewer, water, and natural gas and overhead electric. And the overhead electric has the utility poles that are located on our side of the property. So the northern side of Fairgrounds Road is where those poles are located as well. Located with the industrial building is a large parking area. So a majority of the site is actually asphalt, and that was formerly for the employees of APC Schneider Electric when they had a large workforce. And so majority of the site is asphalt areas that were associated with that parking area as well. Due to technological changes for NORPAC and the industrial user that's there today, there's been technological advances, and the workforce is not as demanding for this use on site as well. So the employee number is much lower than previously needed, and that parking areas and all those asphalt parking areas are now kind of what you would consider an excessive or an underutilized area as well. It's an area that we felt would not be used for employee workforce, and would be better utilized for a residential housing development as well. So it provided us an opportunity to find another use for the land, and we thought the affordable housing aspect of it was an important one as well. Brian, can you go to the existing, actually, we can go right to the proposed conditions. Thank you. Actually, no, existing's fine. I don't think anybody wants to look at a black and white plan, so we'll keep going on that one. Perfect. Yep. Thank you. So as Attorney Morris had mentioned as well, proposed 311 unit. It's a multi-family residential community. It is a mixture of studios, 1 beds and 2 beds, and I'll kind of give you that ratio. It's also written in the development data as well, but there's 89 studio apartments. There's 130 1-bedroom apartments, and there's 92 2-bedroom apartments. So that comes out to a total of 403 bedrooms. Again, that's written in the development data, but I wanted to kind of give you a summary there as well. And those are dispersed throughout the site. There are 6 freestanding buildings, as you can see from kind of that's technically the left is the southern part, but so the southern part into the back and hiding behind the industrial building on the western side as well. So, and one of the things that we look to do, and the architect, David Berryman, will go into greater detail on it as well, was tiering in the heights coming from Fairgrounds Road. So if I was driving down Fairgrounds Road, the front building is actually an amenity building, and that is a 2-story building. The first residential building on the left, again, the southern side there, is actually a 3-story building, and then the remainder of the residential units are 4-story buildings. So again, if you're looking from Fairgrounds Road, it's tiering the heights for where your eye naturally would want to go coming from Fairgrounds Road. And again, Mr. Berryman will go into greater detail on that one as well. That front building, again, would be a community amenities building and potential for retail on site as well. Again, some of the amenities on site that we wanted to propose, we have an in-ground pool directly behind the amenities building. There's an in-ground pool, hot tub, there's a fitness center, there's a pedestrian walking loop that we put to go around the entire property as well, with little stop areas along the pedestrian walking loop for fireplaces and sitting areas. There is a dog park, and there's a playground as well on site. We also have detached covered garages. There's actually 7 detached garages. Each one has 5 spaces in it, so 35 covered garage spaces. And one of the items that I wanted to touch on briefly also is parking. So the residential use under the comprehensive permit under the state law requires 1 space per unit. So that would be 311 for the residential uses. We have provided 318 surface spaces, so those are striped on asphalt parking spaces. Then the 35 garage spaces as well. So, and then on top of that, we actually have 2 areas that we showed on there, and actually, I'm going to walk over there and not talk because I know it needs to capture everything, but there's 2 areas I just want to point out briefly real quick. I'd use a laser, but the TV just absorbs everything anyway. So, so those are 2 additional areas. We're showing them as grassed areas, but we wanted to show, that we have availability to do additional parking if needed. And again, that's 56 between those 2 areas, 56 additional potential parking areas. So that would be as the units come online. If there's any reason from an operational perspective, we feel that we want to make sure that we have enough parking spaces for the residents, we could utilize that area. But we'd like to keep it as the grass area if possible as well. So with those 56 potential, that's a total of 409 total spaces on there. So just to give you a comparative as well, with the 403 bedrooms that are proposed, that's more than 1 space per bedroom, which from our experience and what we hear from apartment developers is the right place to be. Bedroom counts, not unit counts as well. We did have the neighborhood meeting on September 10th. One of the discussion items that I wanted to talk about tonight, and from a previous iteration that both the pre-application and from the neighborhood meeting, was the area on the northern portion. That's actually where the northwest corner was actually where the dog park was originally located. And in some of the feedback that we heard from the neighborhood meeting was asking to relocate the dog park area. And so we did. The dog park area is actually, thank you, Brian, yep, kind of in a more central area away from the residential neighborhood. And we were able to put the garage units over there to kind of help buffer and screen over in that area as well. So that was some of the feedback that we heard. I'm sure there'll be some other feedback tonight that people have. Obviously, there's interested folks that are here tonight as well. That gives an overview on the civil end. Again, this is a conceptual master plan level, so I don't have the detailed engineering calculations at this time. Obviously, the next stage would be when you would hear drainage calculations and such, but we do have the team between architecture, traffic, we have the planner, landscape architect, and fiscal, so they'll be able to fill you in with more details. And one thing that I did say, and I said at the neighborhood meeting as well, I just want to make sure, because I feel when neighbors come to the meeting, they say, all right, this is it. This is my one chance to speak, and I just want to make sure that everyone understands that as well. This is the conceptual master plan stage. This is the very first meeting, the first public meeting that we've had. There's another stage that comes after this, which is the preliminary plan, when all of the very detailed engineering, if this project moves to the next stage, it would have the detailed engineering for the drainage and all of those calculations. So, and there'll be another public meeting that comes with it as well. So there are many stages, and I just want to make sure everyone knows that this is not a one-stop shop. You get one approval and it moves on. There are many people that review this. The town engineer reviews it. The Department of Environmental Management on the state level end has a biologist and engineer that reviews it, so there's a lot of folks that'll be looking at this into the next stages when it gets into kind of some of the more technical content as well. But hopefully I was able to give at least a brief overview of the site layout. Mr. Berryman will do an excellent job. He's got some visuals to be able to show you as well, but I'd be happy to answer any questions on the civil end.
Just, Eric, just in terms of the required findings. at
Could you
this-
just restate your name for the record so
Yes,
it's
sure.
clear?
Kelly Morris Salvatore. Just want to ask you, did you identify any natural, historical, or cultural features on the property?
We did not, no. As I mentioned, from the existing conditions, it's mostly asphalt. There's an industrial, there's no existing natural features remaining on the property.
And is there adequate and permanent physical access to a public street?
Oh, yes, yes. Yeah, Fairgrounds Road is a public road, and we're providing access to it, yes.
And I'm going to ask David the same question, but are the low and moderate income housing units proposed to be integrated throughout the development?
Yeah, actually, yes, they are, and that's a great point. I didn't mention that. For each type, so studio, 1 bed, and 2 bed, each of those will have the 25% low and moderate income. So they'll be spaced out, and I'm sure we'll have to identify, where those units are located in future stages.
And then just, we do plan to subdivide the property from NORPAC. Will that result in the creation of a lot with physical constraints for development?
No.
Okay. That's all I have.
I'm just going to add another question for Mr. Privy. Are you aware that this is in a groundwater recharge zone and it's part of the groundwater protection overlay district?
Yes, I am.
Good.
Actually, yep. And matter of fact, actually, I'm excited. I know it sounds weird but I am excited for the next stage of taking for the drainage and putting water quality improvements in a place where there was a large sea with very little mitigation. So actually, in the next stage, we'll be providing those water quality improvements as well.
And for the benefit of the public, since you mentioned master plan and preliminary stages, perhaps either Peter or Jamie can briefly describe what the vesting process is after master plan.
Sure. So there's been some changes to this law over the recent years. Currently, a comprehensive permit, the applicant has the option, but is not required to file a master plan application. If they choose to file a master plan application, then it would vest with the ordinary time periods that would apply to any master plan application that you're familiar with, and they would, within that time period, have to file for a preliminary plan application and meet the items on the preliminary plan checklist, if it was approved.
Thank you. Please continue.
Yep, just waiting for that. For the record, my name is David Berryman. I'm a principal architect with Newberry Design Associates. Sorry. So I'm just going to walk through the presentation with a couple of the things Eric has already discussed.
David?
Yep.
If you can't hear the echo, we won't pick up, although we may be able to hear you, we won't pick up the recording.
Okay.
Thank you.
Is that good? All right. Again, an aerial view of the site. You can see the existing NORPAC building here, and then all the additional area that's mainly the underutilized parking, which we're going to develop into the housing. These are some of the existing condition site photos. Again, you can see it's pretty much just a sea of parking in and around the building. Again, the overall site plan. This is the landscaping plan, which we can have the landscape architect talk about in a moment. The reason I'm showing a couple of these slides is prior to our development of the design, we spent some time in town looking at some of the historic buildings, mainly the Kingston Station, some of the mill buildings in town, some of the old courthouses, which are now libraries, the existing town hall, the main library, some of the older courthouses and some of the churches to try and pull some of the materials, some of the, the shapes. A lot of these have towers, so we've kind of tried to incorporate a lot of these design features into the design of the development. This is just a video I'm going to play. So this is approaching the site, coming down Fairgrounds Avenue. And then this is the proposed development. You can see in the front, this is the two-story amenities building. It will have the leasing office, the fitness area, the potential for 2 small retail spaces. As you come through, 2-story space that looks out to the pool area in the back, recreational area. Let me get this out of the way. Sorry. Pool, cabana. There's some areas for outdoor barbecuing, some outdoor bathrooms, some other fitness areas. And then as you progress down the site, these are the main buildings that are the 4-story buildings. Off in the distance here is where the dog park is now located. You can see the NORPAC building off to the right. The trees that you see in the background, that's all existing tree that's just outside the property. This path here, this is the walking path that Eric spoke about. It basically makes a 1-mile loop around the entire perimeter of the property without having to leave the property. You can see on the right-hand side, those are the smaller garage buildings that, again, have 5 bays in each of those buildings. So you can see we tried to incorporate some manufactured stone into the base of the buildings with a simulated clapboard, as well as pitched roofs. There is a well, which you can see proposed on all the main buildings to house all the mechanical units and everything from view. This is the back area. Again, outdoor seating areas and fire pits. There's a small playground planned for the back. And then again, you can see the walking path continue around the perimeter of the building. And then as we widen out, you can see all the buildings. Again, those areas at the top of the roofs are where we would hide all the mechanical units. You can see the walking trail, again, the dog park areas in the back. And then, as Eric has described, the front building is a 2-story building, and then the second building is a 3-story, and then we step to the 4 stories. And then also, which you'll see as we pan out a little bit, as part of the landscaping, the plan is to berm pretty much all along the front of the existing NORPAC building. So from the street, it'll shield most of that building. So as you're coming down the street, the focus would really be on the residential development versus the NORPAC building. Yeah. So then we also have our kind of interactive model that we can look around. So you can see simulated view from Fairgrounds Road, the initial 2-story building, the 3-story building in the back, and then further in the back of the site, it steps up to the 4-story buildings. And then also this show the plan for the berming. So you can see this is all built up, and it will have some retaining walls. If we do end up utilizing that parking and that front portion that Eric spoke about would be hidden behind the berm and the retaining wall. And the purpose of this was trying to soften the streetscape along in front of NORPAC. Right now, that's all parking, and then it just goes right to the buildings, not really a lot of landscape. So the plan would be to kind of raise the grade up to kind of shield a lot of that and make the focus on the new residential development. All the trees that you see as part of this is what is shown on the proposed landscape plan. Obviously, the existing trees in the back, and then the existing trees on the side, those are existing to remain trees. But all the trees that you see throughout the site are all proposed new plantings that are part of our landscape plan, which I can bring that back up if Diane, you want to talk to that? Do you want to talk to that?
Good evening. My name is Diane Soul. I'm the landscape architect for this project. David covered a lot of the information. I'll just start at the beginning of Fairgrounds Road. He had mentioned that we've got a berm. We're looking at maybe 3 or 4 feet high, 3-to-1 slope maximum. And on that berm, we would have a mixture of deciduous and evergreen trees that are randomly spaced. They're not in clumps or anything. It's just a really natural feel. And then along the street, we've got deciduous shade trees at 40 feet on center, covering the streetscape. Then to the left, sorry, push that. Not sure if I can get it back. Right.
I'll do it.
Oh, thanks. Thank you. Then to the left of the entrance, which has stone pillars, signage, you saw it in the walkthrough rendering. We've got additional trees, and then in front of the amenities building, we've got the deciduous trees at 40 feet on center continue, and then going up to the Plan West, we have a really, I would call it a heavy buffer between the industrial site and our project, going up the left-hand side of the property line. To the right of that, David had shown some photos of the pool area. And then continuing up, I did forget to mention, along Fairgrounds Road, we have a 4-foot ornamental picket fence along the entire frontage there. Then Plan North, turning the corner there, we've got additional plantings, and he had shown the granite path. Well, I'm not sure it's going to be decomposed granite or it might be asphalt. We're still looking at possibilities for surfacing there. It turns the corner and goes around to the dog park and continues on to the right, and the whole area behind the project is wooded, so that would provide the natural buffer for that side of the site. Continuing on to the right-hand side, where we've got the play area, and then down the back neighbors of Chickashin, we've provided additional buffer. There's a lot of buffer in areas for the residents that already own the property, and they've got large deciduous and evergreen trees, so we're just going to supplement that. And then Plan East, there's existing vegetation that goes down to Fairgrounds Road. So that, of course, that's not on our property. We wouldn't be touching that. And then there's an opaque fence that travels Plan East. I wish I had a pointer here. Plan East takes a left and goes down, zigzags between the existing industrial building on site or adjacent to the site. So that would provide additional buffers, and that's probably going to be a 6-foot opaque fence, and we're looking at materials for that now. As far as plant materials go, we are providing or suggesting a mixture of deciduous and evergreen trees. And for the most part, we're trying to scatter them randomly, especially in the front. When we can space them out for the buffers, we will, but some of the buffers are kind of tight, so we wouldn't be able to really get a nice random layout there. Let's see. I think that pretty much covers the landscape. This is all conceptual, so we haven't chosen any plant materials. I know there was a comment from the Technical Review Committee about using arborvitaes. So we're going to look at that. We probably will use some, because they do provide screening in special instances. So we are aware that we wouldn't propose a lot of arborvitaes there. And then, of course, we'll be looking at the regulations as far as plantings around buildings and that sort of thing. So once we get into the detail of this, we will provide more detailed information and a plant list and that sort of thing.
Thank you.
Good evening, members of the board. For the record, my name is Joseph Lombardo. I have a home office in Westerly, Rhode Island. I was asked to prepare a fiscal impact study as part of this report, this project for you this evening. I'm just going to give you a brief summary of that. Basically, there was two components of this report. One is to estimate the population of the people, the number of people that will be living here, and the number of school-age children as part of that population. And secondarily, there's a fiscal side of this where we look at project revenue calculations, and then we look at what we anticipate to be municipal and educational expenses related to the project, and provide the board with that information for your review. So we know that the project type, we have the number of units being constructed here, the number of LMI units on this 20-acre site. The summary, I'll hold for a second just to give you a little bit on how I prepare this. The idea is to come up with a per person multiplier, and we use current data from either the town budget, or we get census data, or we use Housing Works RI to get the most current data that we can. And that's on page 3 of the report, where I have your municipal budget, which in this case I've included really just public safety, public works, and leisure services. Those are the most used municipal services of this facility. We have education. We have public school students as of October 1. I think it was last year. I hadn't had the opportunity to get current year, which is probably available now. But anyway, you can see on that page multipliers for your students at $24,800 per student, and that's after we take into account state aid to education, and then a per resident multiplier of $675 per resident. Then we attempt to estimate how many people will occupy these units, and as has been described to you, there's a mix. There are studio apartments, there are 1-bedroom, and there are 2-bedroom, and they have different multipliers. I used 1.5 for the studio and the 1-bedrooms, and I used 2.10 for the 2-bedrooms. Now that 2.10, there's a lot of data in my report, which basically that's saying that there's 10 school-age children for every 100 units of a configuration with 2 bedrooms. So since there's 92 of those proposed, we're basically saying there'd be 9 school-age children in that part of the complex where the 2-bedroom units exist. The rest of those numbers are the population, showing a total of 522 people living in the 403 bedrooms I think we counted. Then we spent a lot of time working with the client on trying to estimate what you would be collecting as a community from property taxes. And on page 6, you'll see we have some assessed values of these apartments based on the type at your current tax rate, which is one of the lower ones in the state of Rhode Island at 8.94 per thousand. And you'll see I have projections here of how much revenue per unit, and the total revenue for all 311 units, roughly $480,000. Now this may change over time as the assessor may come in here and may use a different approach to this versus assessed value, may use an income approach to that. But initially, we're using an assessed value per unit, and that's what you see on page 6. So then what we do is we compare the expenses with those revenues. Your expenses are showing at 576,000. So that's all the residents at 675 per resident, and that's your 9 students at 24,000 and change. So that comes to 576. So when you compare the two of them together, you'll see that there's a small shortfall based on what we're projecting the expenses to be and what we're projecting the revenue to be. And that's just a function of the type of units that you have. You run your municipality very well. I know Steve Alford is not the manager anymore, but for all those years that he was here, you manage your community very well. And so your municipal expenses are actually really good compared to a lot of other communities that I look at in Rhode Island. On the flip side, your education cost per student is one of the higher ones. And that's a function of the fact that you have really good school systems and declining enrollment that most communities have. While the school budget goes up every year, the number of students goes down every year. That makes the price per student higher. But that doesn't mean you're sacrificing your education. It just means that you have a good education, and it's costly, and that's what's reflected in these numbers. So in essence, that's the synopsis of what the picture looks like. And I would point out, and I know that Doug's going to cover it in his report, but you are adding 78 LMI units to your count, and that's a very important factor when you look at this report as well. And you're adding a type of housing that's really needed in Rhode Island and really needed in this community, in this area, because you have a lot of large employers, you have attractions to the area, and people look for this type of housing, and I think it's going to fit really well. So there's a lot of benefits to this project, and that's just a snapshot of what it might look like from a fiscal point of view and how many people will be living there. And I'll answer questions if you have them, either now or later.
Thanks, we'll do that after everyone's
Okay.
had a chance to speak.
Thank you.
Good evening. My name's Doug McLean. Do you need my address for the record? Nope, great. I work as a professional planner, and it's good to be back in this building. I actually worked for the town of South Kingstown as a planner for 5 years. That predates, I think, everybody I can recognize in the room. I know a few of you. I know Maria, I've known for a while. That was 7 years ago and 2 children ago for me, so that is a world apart. But it's nice to be back in front of you and, in my opinion, advocating for a positive project. I gave a report for the record, and tonight I just want to give a very high-level summary of the main points in my report. I'm going to cover that in 4 main topics. 1 is neighborhood compatibility. 2 is meeting the local housing need. 3 is comprehensive plan consistency. And then 4 is there's just a few required findings that I wanted to articulate from a planning standpoint. So neighborhood compatibility, and that's an important point to touch on for any land use project. The subject property itself, in my opinion, is an ideal location for this level of growth. The project sits in an industrial zone. It's surrounded by primarily commercial and industrial uses to the south and the west. To the east, there are some limited residential abutters to this property, some direct residential abutters on Chickasha Way. And to the, that's to the north is the residential. To the east is over 2,000 feet of natural screening separating this project from the dwellings across from the Chickasha Brook. This is a Grayfield development proposal that is largely taking advantage of the existing impervious pavement, and the site is currently providing far more parking than is anticipated for the new reuse and new utilization of this, that there's going to be a downsized need for that amount of parking with the new industrial tenant. So this redevelopment of the site places this underutilized parking area and replaces it with much needed housing units, and that is consistent with the town goals. This project is not consuming farmland. It's not utilizing any cultural or replacing any cultural landscape areas, and it's not doing any development in undisturbed habitat areas.
West Kingston is designated by the town as a village center, and the town has expressed interest in growth in this area. There's a village plan that dates back to my era of working with the town. This is going back about 10 years. The village plan for West Kingston still has a lot of very relevant goals and guidance. It does state that a reoccurring theme throughout that plan was seeking mixing residential growth within the village along with commercial and industrial development to support the local economy. And I think this proposal would meet those goals and add housing within the village area while not eroding the fabric of the village itself. This property sits in an established mixed-use area near institutional anchors like URI, Kingston Station, and a little farther away is South County Hospital. Speaking of Kingston Station, the site lies very close to this, about a half a mile away. This is a major transit hub for rail. Also, RIPTA has routes 64 and 66. There's URI shuttle service, access to bike infrastructure. So the site itself is very well served by multimodal transportation. It creates opportunities for households who would like to prefer to reduce their car dependency. And then the site design itself of the subject property has been designed with elements of neighborhood compatibility in mind. That's the gradations of building height. At the street, you've got the 2-story building. The next building behind it is 3-story, and then the 4-story buildings are to the rear of the site or farther away from the street. The housing units are oriented to avoid unnecessary visual or physical disturbances to the nearby homes. And there's ample indoor-outdoor amenities provided. So they're creating, instead of this parking area, more of a pleasing enclave for the future residents of this area. So in general, I do think that this site is compatible with the neighborhood, and not only does it present compatibility, I think that there's a lot of elements that present a positive enhancement to the area. Let's talk about addressing the local housing needs. And I should note, my report on this was drafted largely before recent state law changes went into effect. State law did change one of the required findings for a comprehensive permit. My report reflects the old language, which was, this is the language that it used to have, that the proposed development is consistent with local housing needs as identified in the local comprehensive plan, with particular emphasis on the community's affordable housing plan. The new state law has removed the reference to the comprehensive plan. It only now states that the local housing needs are identified in the community's affordable housing plan. So I just want to correct that for the record. I would note in my report, there's several pages dedicated to how this is consistent with the housing element within the comp plan, and the housing element of South Kingstown's current comp plan does serve as its affordable housing plan. So I've covered that, although I want to make sure for the record it's clear what that finding is in today's state law. Before I dive into any specifics of what the affordable housing plan has, I just want to go over a couple of interesting facts about what is the local need for housing in South Kingstown. A lot of these, there's a recent fact book, Housing Works Rhode Island produces a fact book every year that just came out just a few weeks ago. So there's some fairly recent data that is useful to rely upon for where is there a housing need in South Kingstown. The median household income in South Kingstown is about $111,000. The median housing price in South Kingstown is $635,000. The income that's needed to afford that average housing price is about twice as much as what the average household in South Kingstown makes. So there is a great disparity between what it takes to achieve housing in South Kingstown and what the average resident makes. This means that wage earners in education, healthcare, retail, service sectors are generally going to be priced out of local homeownership options. This will either push them to other communities or they're going to seek out rental options. And the rental is an interesting component of the data for South Kingstown. Within South Kingstown, about 76% of households own
24% rent. The local renters are not doing so well in South Kingstown according to local data. Of all the homeowners, of homeowners, about 23% are cost burdened, meaning they spend more than 30% of their income on their house. Of the renters, 50% of all renters in South Kingstown are cost burdened. So what this adds up to is there's a need in South Kingstown to provide accessible, affordable rental housing. And this is the critical missing need. So what does the town's affordable housing plan, as it's currently provided in the housing element, say to do about this? I have one quote. I don't like to regurgitate information you likely already have, but I think this one's important. The vision statement for the housing element states, the town of South Kingstown will include a range of housing options for its diverse population, including families, young adults, seniors, single-person households. The town will strive to retain the diversity of its residents. Town programs and regulatory efforts will seek to provide appropriate housing opportunities in the community with a focus on infill development and redevelopment in the village areas. So that's the core housing vision as articulated in the housing element. The plan does go on to identify rental as a need, as well as having a range of different housing sizes and types. About 80% of households in town are single-family dwellings, so there's not a great diversity of different housing types. So this plan addresses that. This plan is providing 311 rental units in a multifamily setting. So that gives you some diversity of housing types. In terms of sizes, there's a range of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms. All the units will add much-needed housing stock in a wide range of these different price points. Whether they're affordable with the capital A or affordable with the little a, there will be more achievable housing options through this project. I think the most important thing is that there's 78 deed-restricted affordable units that's getting to that critical need of those disproportionately cost-burdened renters. So the town's comprehensive permit process and the comprehensive plan does indicate the comprehensive permit is and has been historically the most productive strategy for producing affordable units. So this type of proposal is meeting the town's affordable housing plan in that regard. I'm going to be very quick on the comp plan. It's no longer a required finding for this type of application, but I do think it's relevant to know where this application stands for the town's vision. I'll be very quick. It's mostly bullet points. The plan's overall vision states that South Kingstown will fight sprawl by locating new development within villages served by infrastructure and transit. It stresses infill development on previously developed lands. It stresses seeking housing near job centers. It stresses seeking transportation access and connecting residents to employment and leveraging the key transit and multimodal opportunities you have. It stresses, in particular, natural resources, stormwater improvements to deliver environmental gain. And in this case, we have a fully paved site with an opportunity to actually improve stormwater conditions. And those are just a few quick check in the boxes of what the comp plan says at a very high level. I don't want to go into any quotes or cite the language, but the comp plan is very supportive of this type of infill development on a Grayfield site in your village area. As terms of the last component I wanted to talk about, required findings, I'm going to basically just, the two findings that I think are most relevant to planning analysis are finding number 1, does this proposed development, is it consistent with the local needs as identified in the affordable housing plan, or does the proposed development have satisfactorily addressed the issues where there may be inconsistencies? It is my opinion that the proposal is consistent with local needs as identified in the housing element of the comprehensive plan serving as the town's affordable housing plan, and that's supported by the report and the testimony I just gave. Required finding number 2 for a comprehensive permit, whether the proposed development is in compliance with the standards and provisions of the zoning ordinance and land development subdivision regulations, and/or where adjustments as requested by the applicant whether the local concerns that have been affected by the relief granted do not outweigh the state and local need for low and moderate income housing. So the proposal is utilizing a series of adjustments to zoning. In fact, the property itself is industrial, so the residential uses are not allowed. But in my opinion, there is an acute and urgent need for affordable housing across the state and within the town. And this particular proposal is putting specific emphasis on those local needs for rental housing, for the different types of units that are being provided separate from a single family. And I do believe that meeting the needs as this proposal does outweigh the adjustments that are being requested. I think that concludes my broad presentation, and I'll be available for questions when the board is completed with all the presentations. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. For the record, Paul Bannon, Senior Project Director of Transportation Group at Crossman Engineering in Warwick, Rhode Island. Crossman was retained to conduct a traffic impact study for the project to evaluate its impacts and make recommendations for mitigation as appropriate based on our findings. In order to complete our traffic study, we conducted a review of the site plans that were provided by the site engineer to coordinate the access design for the redevelopment and ensure that safe access and egress to and through the property is provided. We conducted site visits various times of the day, days of the week, to observe traffic conditions, inventoried the project area roadways for land use, existing roadway conditions, including horizontal, vertical geometry of the roadway, evaluate site distances at the proposed access to the property. We obtained traffic volume data, including automatic traffic record accounts and intersection turning movement counts in the project area. We reviewed traffic accident data that was obtained from the South Kingston Police Department. We developed a trip generation estimate for the residential reuse of the property using industry standard IT trip generation methods. And then we assessed the safety and operations for both the existing and proposed conditions. As described, the subject property is on the northwesterly side of Fairgrounds Road, approximately 1,200 feet south of Route 138. The overall parcel contains 20 acres of land and a large 282,000 square foot manufacturing building is currently on the property with the associated impervious parking area that handles roughly 1,000 vehicles. Land use in the immediate area can be defined as a mixture of residential, industrial, and commercial properties immediately surrounding the subject lot, including across the street, Arnold Lumber and the Fairground Business Development Center and Ocean State Transit. To the north is a small residential neighborhood abutting our property. Fairgrounds Road is a local street extending generally in a northeast-southwest direction between Kingstown Road to the north and Liberty Lane to the south, spanning approximately a half mile. The road is approximately 26 feet, two-lane, 26-foot wide roadway with no curbing or sidewalks. It's posted at 25 miles per hour. Specifically reviewing the site plan, the proposed residential buildings will be constructed within the impervious areas of the site that contain roughly 1,000 parking spaces. Proposing 6 buildings for residential use containing 311 units, also including a small amenities building for recreational facilities in the pool. Access will be provided from the southern, as Eric had indicated, there's 3 driveways to the site. One driveway, the southern driveway, will be dedicated for the residential use. It'll be shifted slightly to the north, as will the main driveway to NORPAC. The northern driveway will stay the same and not be altered. We obtained, reviewing the traffic conditions, we completed 7-day automatic traffic record counts, both on Fairgrounds Road and Kingstown Road. Fairgrounds Road services a low daily weekday volume of roughly 1,600 vehicles per day during the weekday and 450 vehicles per day on the weekend. That translates to a weekday morning peak of 110 vehicles between 8 and 9 and 150 vehicles between 3 and 4. Kingstown Road in that area services roughly 13,000 vehicles per day during the weekday and 9,500 vehicles on the weekend. That translates into a weekday morning peak of 860 vehicles oriented towards the east to URI, and then during the PM peak, 1,200 vehicles per hour in the late afternoon, transcribed oriented towards the west. After reviewing existing roadway and traffic conditions, we completed analysis of future conditions. We used the IT trip generation manual for the residential use. This size apartment complex would, during the morning peak, estimate to generate 133 vehicle trips, 31 entering, 102 exiting, and during the PM peak, 128 vehicle trips, 78 entering and 50 exiting. We then completed an operational analysis of the existing Fairgrounds Road intersection with Route 138 under existing conditions, and then assigned our site traffic to that future condition, to develop that future condition. Presently, the intersection operates at a level service B during both the AM and PM peak hours. The Department of Transportation is proposing to upgrade Route 38 in this area, extending between, Route 2 and Route 108. That contract is presently under bid, and it's a design-build project that'll be completed over several years. That project includes upgrade of 6 intersections and signalization and 4 bridges, so it'll take several years to be completed. That future condition would coincide with construction of this site and improvements and upgrade to that signal at Fairgrounds Way is proposed. So we included that as a future condition. And under that future, future condition, the intersection will operate at good level of service C. We also reviewed the safety of the proposed driveway, looking at the geometry of Fairgrounds Road in that area. It's straight and level, so the available site distance far exceed the required safe stopping site distance for both the posted speed limit of 25 miles per hour and actual travel speeds between 38 and 41. So in summary, based upon a review of all the data and information we obtained for the project, we determined that adequate and safe access can be provided to this project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelly Morris Salvatore, just a couple of questions for the record. Paul, can you opine as to whether, at this stage of review, there is safe circulation of both pedestrian and vehicular traffic on the site as designed?
Yes, as we reviewed the site plan proposed by DePrete Engineering, sidewalks and interconnection of buildings is provided throughout the property. Sidewalks proposed along the site frontage, and as I just indicated, safe site distances are available at the driveway.
And in your opinion, is there adequate and permanent physical access to a public street with this design?
Yes, there is.
That's all I have. So at this point, Madam Chair, we've completed our presentation. If you have any questions for us.
I'm sure we have a considerable number of questions. Would like to remind everyone that this is the master plan stage of review. It is likely that this hearing will be continued. However, I would like board members to be able to ask questions, but also give the public an opportunity who've been sitting here patiently for 3-something hours to have comments as well. So we can start with engineering questions, if folks want, and to go through the questions relative to category, if everyone is happy with that. Since Mr. Privy was the first one up. Engineering questions? Joe?
I have no doubt that the town needs the housing. It's required. But with that said, we're going to make, the density that's being proposed is pretty high. And we're looking at 311 units, basically under 11 acres. So that's 30 units per acre. It's pretty dense. I want to make sure that we are not creating problems for the town infrastructure. So I'm going to ask some questions. I don't necessarily expect you to have the answers tonight, but it's going to, I think, fall between you and Public Works. But starting with the sewer, I want to get a good understanding of what the existing capacity is, how much this is going to use, how much capacity is left, how many houses in the area are currently not on sewer, and that whether there would be remaining enough capacity so that if we had a full build-out in that area of 138 and West Kingston, we wouldn't be imposing major issues on existing homeowners that just haven't tied in yet. So with that said, I think if between you and Mark, we can get an understanding of what the existing capacity is of the sewer line, what the existing uses of the sewer line, if we can get the idea of the remaining GPM that that sewer line could facilitate. And then again, maybe from Mark's perspective, how many units in that area are not on sewer, and would a full build-out require design provisions? Perhaps whether that be that the design provisions introduce that this be socially dosed versus, time dosed versus socially dosed to stay below those capacities, or in worst case, larger pipes. So that's something I'm hoping that you could work with Mark, and that at the next meeting we get a full understanding on that. Again, I want to make sure we're protecting the homeowners in the area. The same would be for the water, what the existing GPM is in the area, what the existing GPM use is in the area, what added GPM this will be taking of those water lines, and how many units in that area, the 138, are currently not on water, and would a full build-out of the 138 area in West Kingston require any special design provisions and/or additional pipes in the future? Again, I want to make sure we're not imposing an issue for neighboring property owners just because they're the last one to the party. I think that's the main issue, my main engineering questions right now.
Is there any chance I could just quickly elaborate on that real quickly? Or do you want to go? I was just going to say real quickly, we are required to do a sewer feasibility study, as you're probably aware as well, that we would work with Department of Public Services to work on a sewer feasibility study at the next stage. And then also similarly with Kingston Water, we've already talked to them, and they would be requiring that they would use their third-party consultant to do a hydraulic model and update the model to put this into there and ensure that the infrastructure was in place as well.
I'm fully aware of those requirements and that you'll do those studies. I want to make sure that we fully understand not just that you have or that it has capacity to facilitate this project, but beyond this project, that the homeowners, when they go to hook up in the future, that they have capacity.
Got it.
What I wouldn't want is that, you do a feasibility study, you find out that you can fit within the existing capacities, however you use up we're at 98% of the capacity, and then homeowners who tie in later have to time dose, and they're expensive with expensive tanks and pumps. So I want to make sure that's what we avoid. So it's beyond the feasibility study, but make sure, kind of that long-range look after you're done.
Yep.
So I know that
and that
is going to fall
that
on
is
Mark.
one of the things actually with the sewer feasibility too is there are action levels. Again, it wouldn't ever be at 98%. There is action levels where infrastructure is looked at. Typically that's around 80%, where they start looking at if that's anywhere near 80% of a capacity, infrastructure improvements need to start to be looking at it. So yeah, I'm fully committed to ensuring that we work with TPS, Public Services, to make sure that there's adequate for there. And as you mentioned, expansions of other in the area. So yeah, got it. Thank you.
Other questions related to engineering, stormwater, site layout?
I'm here if you think of them later.
I've got a couple.
Sure.
So best management practices, given the fact that this is in a groundwater recharge area, it would be important for you to demonstrate where you can minimize impervious cover, disconnect the impervious cover, preserve natural areas, infiltrate wherever possible. I have a list. Manage the runoff as close to the source as possible, such that stormwater controls are distributed in natural drainage patterns remain intact, which we all understand the current situation and the amount of impervious area. Consideration of pervious parking lots. This sort of goes a little into the landscape architecture, but opportunities for additional rain gardens, bioretention areas. That's all I have for now, but I'm sure we'll have more questions going forward.
Yep.
Anyone else on site layout? Robin?
I don't know if I particularly have a question, but we all know that every year now, South Kingstown has a water problem. And the density of this development would certainly put a lot more pressure on our water problem. How many people are going to be working as employees at NORPAC?
I don't know that answer
Right.
off the top of my head. I mean, I could
Right,
get that
so,
answer. But
when you say that our community needs this, our community, those people don't, if they're in the community, they're local, they don't need the train, that's not going to be an attraction. It's going to attract people from outside our community more than inside our community. So I'm uncomfortable with all the reference to how much our community needs this and will benefit from this. A lot of times you've talked about all this parking lot, but you're replacing it with rooftop, so you're not, it's not like, oh, this is great, all that parking lot's gone now. And I also think that there are certainly sections of our zoning ordinance that this does not fit, right? We have section 301, right, that prohibits residential use. We have section 401 with the dimensions of the height of a building. I'm very uncomfortable with the massive size of these buildings, and our zoning ordinance doesn't allow that tall of a building. So I think, you've got some serious rethinking to do there. And if you lower the height of those buildings, then you're immediately addressing our concerns with density, because you're exceeding the allowable density by a huge amount. Yeah, so your density requirements, I don't think I could ever vote in a way that would approve this, because section H8, we're looking at the rules, and you far exceed. You're proposing, 28.6 units per acre, and you would be allowed at least 5 units per acre, so, it just doesn't compare. I was also wondering what's for sale in the retail store. That never seems to get talked about. And is that open to the public? And I know that most of you involved in this project don't drive these roads, but that is a narrow road, and I know that the cars leaving that they're not all going to turn onto 138, because that's a terrible time kill. It's already a time kill. I forget whether you called it a level C, but, I mean, what's so good about a level C performance? They're all going to head further down the other direction and come out on Route 2. And the poor folks that live down there are already struggling from people cutting through on that road. So I think that would be a major misfortune for them and something that we shouldn't put upon them. So I apologize, my questions aren't particularly engineering, but the night is going to go on long, and I'd like the public to be able to talk. The presenters seem to have taken quite a bit of time, and so I'd like to keep it moving.
Thank you. Thanks for the feedback.
And I would just like to add a couple of things on to Robin's comments. With the comprehensive permit, despite any regulations or guardrails that we have as a community, an applicant can come in the name of affordable housing and ask for whatever density they would like to ask for. Just to be clear and to be clear to the public. And a couple of things related to this. This would be the largest single non-institutional housing complex in South Kingstown. The reference to adjustments basically is just another word for waivers, just so everyone understands that. And some of the waivers are needed because they can't comply with what small degree of regulations we still have under the comprehensive permit. Early on, when this application came forward for pre-application, it was described to us as primarily an industrial project with the housing component as a secondary kind of addition. It does not seem to be that way at this point in time. The amount of land that we have in South Kingstown that's zoned industrial is, I think, less than 8%. And once that industrial land is gone, it's not going to come back. There has been legislation that's been passed this past session that does allow for, regardless of a community's regulation, allows for industrially zoned land in certain circumstances to be by right developed as residential. But however, that, again, that is a concern. The fact that we're in the groundwater protection overlay district, as I said earlier, with stormwater, that is also a concern. This almost appears to be institutional in scale, just because there's nothing like this other than what you see on campus at the university. I'll let others talk about the traffic, but many of us who've lived in the area for many, many years realize that the traffic associated with the university does not necessarily comport to standards in the ITE manual. The AM and PM normal working, going to work and coming back from work has very little to do with students and how they travel. Parking on Fairgrounds Road, I'm not sure I understand why that is in your plan, but again, if a plan is made to such a degree that it overburdens the site, then not only do you have to ask for waivers, but you may not be able to keep the parking contained within the site. So that's just something that I noticed, but I don't want to talk forever, so you'll have lots of questions. I'd like to give other board members a chance to chat and then turn it over to the public.
I'm not ready yet.
Caper? Nope.
I want to hear from the public.
Liz?
I have a question regarding the open space. I know you mentioned that it's 10% of the developable area, but when I look at the site plan, it appears to be sort of little bits and pieces around the edges, except of course for the recreation area. So if you could give me more information as far as exactly, or close to exactly, how much open space we have, and what the impact would be if you were to need that additional parking area. How much does that reduce the open space that we have?
Okay, I can get you that data.
Okay, thank you.
Robin?
Yeah, Maria, you've confused me. You've made it sound like they can have unlimited density. I don't see
They
how
can
that
ask for
agrees
it.
with the rule.
They can ask for it under a comprehensive.
But it's
permit.
not necessarily granted to them. According to our regulations here, they are allowed at least 5 units per acre as a boost, right? That still doesn't compare to what they're proposing.
I'll let Peter weigh in on that.
Sure. Under the provision that you're citing, the 5 units per acre, when an applicant files a comprehensive permit application that's proposing to restrict 25% of the units to low to moderate income housing, as this project is, and it has public and sewer and water, they're entitled to get a density bonus of 5 units per acre. This is an industrial, that as a minimum. This is an industrial zoned lot, which would not allow any of the residential units. So a 5 units per acre density bonus would be 5 units on 0, which would be 5 units per acre. They can request more because they're entitled to request waivers from all local regulations by state law, just due to the fact that they are committing 25% of the housing to low to moderate income housing. The 7 point something number that you're referencing, that is a number that comes from local regulations for multi-household developments that are allowed, that are the ones that are allowed by right under the ordinance. This wouldn't be because they're not allowed in this zone. But if it was a by right non-comp permit project, that approximately 7 unit per acre would set a cap. Because this is a comp permit, they can request a waiver of that cap, which, technically wouldn't even apply because this isn't an area that allows that type of development. So this is just allowed as a comp permit. If it's approved, if they meet each of the required findings, at a minimum, they'd have to be allowed 5 units per acre, but they're requesting more than that as a waiver from local regulations.
And I just wanted to add one more thing relative to the industrial zone. We should be aware of potential negative impacts to existing businesses that exist by right in this industrial zone as we move forward. So I'd like to hear from the public because it's now 10 minutes to 10, and with the understanding that there will be other opportunities. However, the reason I brought up vesting is that once an applicant has master plan, unless there are changes due to state permit issues, they generally, the density and the general layout is vested, meaning that they have the right to move into preliminary with that particular density and general layout. So just to be. So if anyone would like to speak, come up to the mic and state your name for the record.
Thank you. So my name is Andy Curtis. My family owns 141 Fairgrounds Road. So we've got 60,000 square feet of industrial space there. My family also owns Peacedale Mill. So we have 120,000 of industrial space there too. My concern, many years ago, when I was on the Economic Development Committee, that we save for this town as much industrial space as we can. Because the guys in the future need someplace to start their business. There are businesses in town that need to move and get bigger. Currently at Peacedale, we've got 34 tenants. We have no room for any more. I would say we probably get at least one ask every 2 weeks for space. We also rent down on 141. We've got Arnold Backyard, Rhode Island Mushroom, Shades On, and then our family company, Kenyon Consumer. So we're very concerned about industrial space. And I think it would be a big mistake in your heaviest industrial area in town to parachute in 300 units of consumers that are going to get right in the middle of this space. The other part I want to talk about, because nobody's really talked about what's going on down there. We're not a quiet little area. All of the industrial space there are full to the max. Everybody's busy. There's hundreds of people working down there. We're serviced by 18-wheelers, flatbeds, the biggest dump trucks you've ever seen, every contractor in town, the bus station, Arnold's fleet of trucks, and every major trucking firm that's in southern Rhode Island is visiting that area. So I think I wouldn't ever want a kid to try to learn how to ride a bicycle on that road. Walking on that road is a danger. We do have a few bikers. We've been down there 35 years. Every day my head's on a swivel. You've got trucks that are coming out there. They're coming straight out. The road's not wide enough to turn, so they're turning on the other side of the road. There's no sidewalks. And if you decide to put sidewalks in, what are you going to do with Arnold's guys? You got 100 guys parking along the road there. I would have a suggestion for this, since there is not that much industrial space in town, that maybe instead of making apartments, maybe you could start making some industrial space available. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name's John Copeland. I live in the area out there. I have some major concerns about having this project go through. Number one, the proximity to the river and the aquifer that's underneath there. That's one of our major aquifers in the state, and they're going to put it right on top. That does not work. The other issues that I have, the impact that it'll have on the fire department. We have 2 fire trucks in West Kingston. They've never lost a foundation, but they sure haven't put out too many fires. When we add that number of houses out there and apartments, we cannot take care of them with 2 volunteer fire trucks. It doesn't work. Absolutely doesn't work. As far as traffic goes, 138 is already backed up from Fairgrounds Road all the way back to Route 2. That's probably a mile and a half, something like that. And it's that way every morning and every afternoon. We can't stand to have any more traffic out there. Further, the impact that we are going to have with all those units out there on the schools, it's going to be very, very heavy. For the people who are thinking about developing this land, I have some things for you to think about. What are the disadvantages of living in West Kingston? You have no retail. You have to drive 5 to 8 miles to get groceries. You have no fire trucks. You have 2 that are volunteer, and they will never get there to save your house. It's an industrial area. It's been an industrial area for centuries, and It's not a residential area. The other thing that happens is that this project is completely out of character with West Kingston. You go out and look around West Kingston, it's a nice little town too, nice little village to live in. It's great. Try to find some food. A good restaurant. All the other stuff that you're looking for your family, not in West Kingston. And now you're going to overload it with apartments. And I don't think it's a good idea. And if you were asking me to invest in this project, I would run as fast as I could away. Further, I don't know what clientele the people, the developers are thinking about trying to bring in. But we talked about a lot of people that were put on the list there. URI students are going to be one of the first ones that are going to want to come in there. And then you're going to have another problem on your hands. So I do not think that this is a good project. I think that I know we need the housing, but to take 6 buildings, 6 large buildings, and slam them right in the middle of a little village doesn't work. It does not work. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Alan Pickering. I live in Blueberry Meadows, which is a residential compound adjacent to this property. They forgot to mention that they had these plenary meetings. No one in our association, there are 9 houses on our road, had any notice about their meetings before. So I think we'd be better represented if we had more notice. I'm not going to keep you here too long because I think John made a lot of good points. I'd like to echo what he said about the traffic because I live it every day. Maybe some of you go through that traffic too. You try and pull out on 138 next to Arnold's Lumber. There's nowhere to go sometimes depending on the classes at URI. A lot of those people will take the back road, Route 2, but it doesn't get any better there. Just overall, I'm astonished at the scale of this proposal. I mean, it does seem like it's an assault on a neighborhood. I would just say this, if you have your houses, you probably moved to South County like I did, or maybe you've been a long-term resident here forever. I've been here 35 plus years. I moved here for a reason, because it was nice, quiet neighborhood. This will not do anything. I'm concerned about my property values, let alone all the other things that you heard about the traffic and safety on Fairgrounds Road. I think also you made a good point about the industrial land. As I said, I've been here forever, 35 years, and in the past there have been other proposals to use that industrial land that have come through. And the planning board, I think wisely, rejected those proposals. Again, there's not much industrial land. I don't know if there's any place left like that plot near NORPAC. So I hope their business does well, but I can't see putting in these apartments. I agree we need some housing. My son is actually looking for an affordable house in South Kingston, but I don't think this is the answer at all. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, or good night. My name's Jane Copeland. I live on Blueberry Lane in West Kingston. My biggest complaint about this is the impact it's going to have on the groundwater in Great Swamp. We are on well water, and we are not on septic. We depend on that aquifer and that groundwater for our water, for our well water. And I think that all the impervious surface that's going on here is no better than what is there now. It's not going to help the groundwater. It's not going to help us with our water concerns. I also believe that it's way too big for the area. That area is nothing but a rural area with single-family houses. This is huge. It looks like 3 or 4 Hampton Inns put together. It just does not fit our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening, I'm Kevin Foster. I too live at Blueberry Meadows. I'll be brief. I share my neighbors' concerns, but I want to touch briefly on density. I think the planning board made some really good points about density, but I want to also expand it to the concept of URI students, which John alluded to. I went to college. Many people did. I can envision a scenario where a 2-bedroom apartment would house 4 students. So the 522 estimated residents, in my view, is potentially materially understated. So all the concerns people have raised regarding traffic and everything else, I would multiply that by 2. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Rich Collinson. How are you? A lot of answers were answered for me tonight. Joe, you answered on the infrastructure of our sewer system, our water system. That's what I'm from 100 Acre Pond. I'm on a total different area. You guys get a great presentation of what you want to do. But the magnitude for this development in West Kingston, I think you're going to be overburdening yourself. You got to look at your infrastructure, and that's what I asked you to do. Your rescue, your fire, police. Look at the infrastructure before we commit to anything. So, or do yourself your own analysis. Hire an analogy guy, let him go out and do his own analysis and see what you're getting. You're getting the analysis of a developer here, but you're not getting your own. So I ask you to go out and check it for yourself and see what happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Beth Curtis. My husband already spoke, but I thought it brought up a good point. I mean, I feel the same way about it's too much, you're taking industrial land, but beyond that, across the street from the proposed development is the bus depot for South Kingstown. I go to work every day. It is a gridlock, not just from Fairgrounds, but from Ministerial Road to Fairgrounds to Route 2. So when you have 200 or 300 cars coming out of that development in the morning, those buses are not going to be on schedule. So I just think that you've got to think about what's there and what the traffic patterns are for the existing customers and residents. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak? If not, any questions from planning board members for the applicant to consider before the next meeting, and then a motion to continue this to the next month's meeting? Armin.
Other one.
If the lights were, you're good.
We've heard some discussion about the density concerns. I didn't hear any testimony, though, from the applicants as to why they need and what waivers they need from the density. So I'd like them to address the issues of requests for density variations. Unless I misunderstood the council, that they don't apply.
So, Mr. Chairman, I'll give my perspective on the density waivers that they're going to have to seek on this application. Of course, the applicant can weigh in. So, the allowed density, if this wasn't a comp permit, would be 0, because there's no residents that would be allowed on an industrial zone. So, all the density that they're proposing is going to be a waiver from density. So the minimum density that they're allowed, you cannot give them less than this if they meet the requirements for a comprehensive permit, which is a special state law process for creating affordable housing. The minimum density that they'd be allowed would be 5 units per acre. But they're requesting a density waiver beyond that to the current density they're proposing, which is 28, around 28 units per acre.
So that's why I want to hear some testimony of why they need to go to that 5 times what might be permitted.
And do you have other questions before we go around the table? Because we're not
No,
going to get
that's
answers
the only
probably
question I
tonight.
have.
Okay. Anyone else? Caper?
Has there been any highest and best use analysis of the area? I mean, and what are our industrial, we've heard residents of the area say that the industrial area is fully built out, but I don't really know what the industrial density is in the town. What are the needs? I mean, do we have any sort of analysis of that kind of information available?
Other questions? Joe?
It's not really a question, just share my thoughts right now, which is that, again, as Peter said, the minimum we can consider is 5. Beyond that, it's really a balance of what the town needs are and what the impacts are to the area. Right now, I believe that density being proposed is too high. I'm open to more than 5 because I think the town needs the affordable housing. I think that it's a relatively good area, being next to the university, being next to the train station. I would like to see some more open space. I mean, I think that it's pretty limited. I know you talked about the dog path and a walking path, but when I look at that site plan, there doesn't seem to be a lot of open space considering how many people will be living there. I also kind of question a little the impact of the schools. I know the gave testimony of 2.1, and that may be case for the market rate, but my experience with the units that I have is that when you have affordable housing and you have people that are on housing assistance, it's usually a little bit higher than that. I mean, I personally have apartments. I probably have 6 or 7 equivalent LMI units, and 100% of those have children. So that's just been my experience. But I personally would like to see them maybe work on a little more open space and a little less density.
Anyone else? I have one. Susan?
Like other members of the board, I'm a little shocked by the density and the height and the scale of these buildings in that space. And I could certainly be more comfortable if there were less units with more open space. Alternatively, if your business model is locked into 311 units for this space, I would be quite pleased to see a higher percentage of affordable housing to go in. You're asking for some pretty big concessions from this town, and it seems that maybe some public sentiment isn't going in your favor. I think in addition of affordable units, a higher percentage might soothe that discomfort a little bit, because this is the one sentiment that every single person in this town has in common is we don't want to look like, and then there's a town that we don't talk about that is not what we want. This development to me is precisely plucked out of that town that we all don't want to look like. And I think something needs to soften the blow, whether it's less density or more green space or even some architectural, the architecture is fine, but every building looks exactly the same, which makes it look institutional to me. But also, if you could ramp up that affordable number, that I think would soften the blow for how much you're asking for the town to give to make this happen. It's my opinion. Thank you.
I think sometimes the unspoken word is...
Oh, could you just repeat your name for the record, please?
John Copeland. The unspoken word is something that needs to be said. Not one person that I've talked to from West Kingston is in favor of this proposal in any way, shape, or form. As soon as it came out, everybody was up in arms. And the people that are trying to develop it may find that that might be an issue for them as far as trying to find occupants also. So this might be a loser in the breeding.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any last thoughts from anyone?
I have one more.
Go ahead, Susan.
I think it also might be useful to understand who your demographic is that you're marketing these units to. It's convenient to University of Rhode Island, and if this will become a dormitory, because, I don't know if you're considering partial year tenants, leave this summer open for some kind of other occupancy, but if this were to become URI Dorm South, this might be a problem. And I don't know how you could control that. I don't know if you have thoughts about that. But I think one of the things that will concern me and may concern the community is whether or not this will become an off-campus dormitory. And I know that every college kid isn't full of parties and all kinds of craziness, and I was a good college student. I'm sure we all were. But it would be concerning if half of these units were being occupied by college students, and I think we need some kind of assurance that that's not the business plan.
We're going to respond to all of these comments when we come back, but
Yes,
I want you to be assured that this project is not intended for URI students, and when we come back, we can talk about how we're going to encourage, maybe a couple of graduate students, but not what you're thinking. That's not the market they're going after. What they want to do is provide housing for nearby employers, their own, the NORPAC business, and other young professionals. So we'll have a better answer, but I just want you to be assured that this is not geared to URI students. Mm-hmm.
And, just to reiterate, when this applicant came before us at pre-application, it was, again, primarily moving his business, an industrial project with a small component of housing. I think the board was very clear in that they wanted to see less height, less density, deal with the groundwater situation. As many folks who have lived in the area know, when APC, Schneider, and so on, whenever there was a significant storm, half the parking lot was roped off because there was standing water. So an issue that could be solved.
Hi, my name is Jane Carlson Pickering. My husband already spoke tonight. I also live in Blueberry Meadows. This, to me, is obscene for the village of West Kingston. I can't even believe we're here trying to even discuss this. But I do want to thank the Planning Committee for the points that you made, because you've expressed many of the things that we're feeling. And even though we don't have everybody here that we'd like to have here tonight, we've tried to give a good representation of what our concerns are, and we appreciate you listening. I read every day about the problems of people who live in Narragansett, where you have students coming in and taking a rental, destroying property, having issues with noise ordinances being broken, and I don't want our town of West Kingston to become a dumping ground for these students. And you say the students aren't going to afford these apartments. Well, they're not paying for them, the parents are. And that's what happens. And that's what leads to all different kinds of problems in an area where you have a small village being, I say squished by something of this magnitude. So I hope you hear us, even though we are only few here tonight, but we represent an entire town, a village, which just can't handle something of this impact. Thank you.
Thank you. So it looks as though our November meeting would be on the 25th, is that right?
Correct.
Jamie? So would entertain a motion to continue this public hearing to November 25th.
Madam Chair, just
Yes.
before you do that, I
Sure.
do want to note, we were handed a piece of paper from a member of the audience earlier on who couldn't stay through the public hearing. It is titled "A Petition Opposing the Construction of a 300-Unit Apartment Complex on Fairgrounds Road, South Kingstown, Rhode Island." It contains in essence, 3 points or 3 small paragraphs in opposition of this. It's titled petition. There is no signature, there is no author, there are no signatories to the petition as it is titled. It is a 1-page handout. So we want to just note this for the record. We
Okay.
will make it
Sure.
available for the applicant as
Sure.
well as the planning board members as we move forward.
Great, thank you, Jamie. Would someone like to make a motion to continue this public hearing to our November meeting, which is on the 25th?
And Madam Chair?
Yes.
I just wanted to get on the record that there is a 60-day time clock from the certificate of completion. So that brings us to December 15th. Just wanted the board to be aware of that.
Yes, and actually, we normally only have one meeting in December. Jamie, what would the date of that be?
Tuesday, December 9th.
Tuesday the what?
December 9th.
December 9th.
So
Okay.
second Tuesday of the month.
Would someone like to make the motion?
Just before we do that,
Sure.
I'm just trying to understand the time frame. It seems like we only have one meeting, and at that next meeting, we're gonna have to vote to, which way that motion's gonna go.
Yeah, what was the date that it was certified complete?
Just not looking back quickly, but the decision time frame was 65 days from certified complete, which takes us to December 15th. In most instances, given the scale of the project and the issues associated with holidays and perhaps only one meeting a month, it's been my understanding and experience that the applicants in all likelihood would consent to an extension to allow adequate time and not put the planning board under pressure of having to make a decision immediately upon closing a public hearing.
We would agree to that. I mean, we can talk about it at the November 25th meeting, but we're not going to force you to make a decision if you're not ready.
Thank you. Our decision timeframes over the last few years have been shortened by the General Assembly, so that puts us in a more difficult situation when we have multiple projects to review. So Susan, you made the motion?
To continue this until November 25th.
Do we have a second? Second from Joe. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Motion carries. Thanks, everyone. We do need a duty member for the next TRC meeting, which is, Jamie?
November 12th.
November 12th?
12th.
And anyone, November 12th? Liz?
For
We have a
members of the
volunteer.
public,
Motion to adjourn?
no, Madam Chair, before you adjourn.
Excuse me?
Before you adjourn, just one
Sure.
administrative issue.
Okay.
As you know, Jay Parker has taken a job in the private sector, so he is no longer part of our planning department. We do have with us tonight Tracy Owens, who, if people are wondering who that stranger is sitting at our table, Tracy has been with us for a few weeks now. She's fulfilling the role of principal planner as well as the lion's share of our GIS. She comes from a litany of background, but primarily ran the GIS program for the Army National Guard as a civilian, so we look forward to working with her. As we move into our next meeting scheduled, for the work session scheduled for November, just bear with me, 13th, thank you, Lynn. I have a potential conflict because I'm away at a conference, which only, because we're down, our deputy director leaves Brian and I for the lion's share of our meetings. So we will probably send out a doodle poll on moving that meeting on the 13th. Again, it's designed as a work session, so potentially we can cancel it, move it out a week or so, or just find a solution. But again, I don't want to leave you short on staff for a work session moving into some potentially important matters on the regulatory side.
Sounds good, Jamie, and welcome, Tracy, and we're glad you're so proficient in multiple areas.
We also have another person who's not normally recognized here, and our new member, Armin Monaco, sitting to the right of Robin or my left. So thank you, Armin.
Yes. Welcome, Armand. And just so you know, there is a special statewide planning board training on November 15th at the Crown Plaza in Warwick. It's designed for planning board members, zoning, and HGC folks. So, excellent. All right, motion to adjourn? Probably the SNEPA conference. Is that what it was? Yeah. It's a kind of a tri-state planning conference, and this year it's in Rhode Island. Motion to adjourn. Thank you, Joe. Second? Second from, yes. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Meeting adjourned. Thank you.